Chapter 126. That night, Consort Taizhen had insomnia. Lying in the palace tent, Consort Taizhen tossed and turned in bed. All she could think about was the poem, Song of Purity and Peace. There had never been a poem that could describe the depths of a woman's heart, and there had never been a poem that could touch a woman's heart like this. Even the illiterate old nannies could feel that the poem was extremely beautiful. Holding the letter, Consort Taizhen suddenly understood why the palace maid of the clothes incineration workshop had been so bold as to risk execution to hide this letter and this poem. It wasn't that she was bold, but that even though she knew this, she couldn't bear to do it and couldn't bear to do it. What made Consort Taizhen even more unforgettable was that this Song of Purity and Peace was clearly only one of the poems. There was bound to be a second and a third. The first one was already so beautiful. What would the second and third be like? Consort Taizhen lost her composure. In Yuzhen Palace, while Consort Taizhen's heart was being stirred by the Song of Purity and Peace, another storm was brewing in the court. The King of Song hadn't attended court for several days. He had been forced out of court by the Holy Emperor by resting at home. This matter angered the officials, and their opposition became even more intense. The supporters and opponents of the two sides were clearly divided, and the debate had reached a white-hot stage. At this time, some officials suggested joining forces with the King of Song to gather officials from all over the Tang dynasty and gather a list of 10,000 names. Then, together, they would submit a petition to stop the Holy Emperor. However, at this critical moment, something unexpected happened. The most vehement opponent of the Consort Taizhen incident, and the leader of everyone's opinion, the King of Song, suddenly chose to remain silent. This sudden change caught the officials by surprise. No one thought that the King of Song was afraid. Some ministers who were familiar with the King of Song went to visit him, but they received an unexpected piece of news from the King of Song. The King of Song had been determined to consort Taizhen into the palace. But recently, the King of Song had learned something new. Although the King of Song said it vaguely. However, the ministers still received a shocking piece of news from the King of Song. Consort Taizhen's case had a hidden story. The real situation might not be what everyone thought it was. In an instant, everyone was stunned. Everyone knew the King of Song's character. He would never lie about something like this. As a prince of the Tang dynasty, there was no need for him to lie. It was precisely because of this that the King of Song's silence caused such a huge shock among the court officials. No one knew what the hidden story the King of Song was talking about. But it was like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples. The King of Song's attitude had a shocking effect on the officials. Originally, everyone was prepared to stop Consort Taizhen from entering the palace no matter what, even if it meant death. They had to stop this farce of human relations between the emperor and the ministers of the Tang dynasty. But in an instant, many of the civil and military officials, as well as the local officials, all hesitated. Just a moment of hesitation was more than enough. As long as there was the slightest bit of hesitation in people's hearts, they could no longer oppose it as resolutely as before. For a moment, the voices opposing Consort Taizhen in the court were suddenly reduced by more than half. Just like that, the whole matter had a reversal that no one had expected. Ha ha ha, here comes good news. Great news. In Yuzhen Palace, Yang Zhao, dressed in a long white robe, walked in with a ruddy face and a scroll of memorials in one hand, laughing heartily. Our biggest enemy, the King of Song Li Qingqi, has actually changed his temperament. Not only did he not oppose us, he even spoke up for us. Yang Zhao was beaming with joy. After so many days, this was the happiest he had been. What? In the red tent, Consort Taizhen suddenly stood up and walked to the edge of the tent. She also had a look of surprise on her face. Yang Zhao did not hide anything and recounted what had happened in the court. Sister, you don't know. Without the King of Song, those who oppose us in the court are no longer what they used to be. The current situation is very good for us. Yang Zhao was beaming with joy and excitement. What do you mean by very good? This is clearly because after the King of Song was demoted by His Majesty, he is afraid and wants to take the initiative to express goodwill to us. Consort Taizhen thought for a moment and suddenly snorted coldly. She had long known that the King of Song had offended the Holy Emperor and received 5 imperial edicts. In her view, the King of Song was clearly showing weakness. You can't say that. Although he was demoted, his influence is still there. If he were to make a public appeal, the officials would still respond, which would be very disadvantageous to us. Now that he has taken the initiative to remain silent, this is good news for us. Yang Zhao said. Consort Taizhen snorted, but she had to admit that her cousin Yang Zhao's words made sense. The Holy Emperor could completely ignore the officials and forcefully welcome her into the palace as a concubine. But the feeling of being criticized and reviled by the entire court was not a good one. If he could enter the palace safely and peacefully, that would be for the best. After all, if she wanted to ascend the throne after entering the palace, she could not ignore the criticism of the officials. Little sister, what's that in your hand? Yang Zhao's sharp eyes suddenly noticed that Consort Taizhen was holding something in her hand. Moreover, it seemed to be a letter. Yang Zhao's heart skipped a beat. He immediately sensed that something was amiss. His little sister had no relatives in the capital. Other than him, she had no other relatives, so why would anyone write a letter to her? Little sister, can I take a look? Yang Zhao extended a hand and asked. Consort Taizhen hesitated for a moment, but she also knew that her cousin Yang Zhao was the sort of person who would spend too much effort until he achieved his goal. After a moment of hesitation, she reluctantly handed over the poem of purity and peace. This is a poem. Yang Zhao was dumbfounded. He had thought of everything, but he didn't expect his little sister to be holding a poem in her hand. Consort Taizhen nodded. Return it to me after you're done. Don't damage it. Yang Zhao was stunned for a moment. A hint of astonishment flashed across his eyes before he lowered his head and continued reading. Yang Zhao didn't have much attainment in poetry. It would be more appropriate for him to roll dice. However, even though Yang Zhao was lazy and ignorant, he could still tell that the poem was well written. Good poem. It is indeed a good poem. Even a crude person like me can tell that it's a compliment to a woman. Yang Zhao answered perfunctorily with disinterest as he casually asked, the King of Song, Li Qingqi. What? Like a bolt of lightning falling in the hall, Yang Zhao was dumbfounded and his eyes almost fell to the ground. The King of Song. Li Qingqi. How is that possible? Yang Zhao looked at his little sister in disbelief. This news was really unexpected. Yang Zhao felt as if he had been hit by a mountain. Do I need to lie to you? The letter was sent a few days ago, before you came here. Consort Taizhen said coldly. Ah. Yang Zhao suddenly felt that his brain wasn't enough to process the information. A few days ago. He didn't receive any news about this at all. But why is this happening? What does he want to do? After calming down, Yang Zhao felt very puzzled. I really didn't understand before. But now, after hearing what you said, I understand. I've just said that Li Qingqi is afraid. He's deliberately trying to please us. Consort Taizhen said coldly. Thinking of the grievances, accusations, and abuse she had suffered before, she still felt a little wronged. I didn't know that this was sent by the King of Song, but this doesn't seem very good. Yang Zhao picked up the letter in his hand and read it again. He frowned. Although I don't know much about poetry, I can tell that there seems to be a sense of longing in this poem. Sister, if this falls into the hands of the Holy Emperor, it won't be a good thing. Why would the King of Song send you such a poem? Brother, you're thinking too much. Look at the words on the paper. Does it look like something written by the King of Song? Unexpectedly, Consort Taizhen smiled coldly and didn't care at all. Indeed, if this poem was written by the King of Song, there would probably be some rumors. But Consort Taizhen was sure that this was not the handwriting of the King of Song at all. This is not the handwriting of the King of Song. Yang Zhao copied the letter and smiled awkwardly. He had just noticed that although the poem was well written, the poem was crooked. It was a little ugly to look at. But he was new here and didn't know much about the court, so he thought that this was the handwriting of the princes of the Tang dynasty. It turned out that this was not written by the King of Song at all. Humph, although it's not written by the King of Song, it has his seal on it. At least, he has reached his goal in this letter and represents his intention. It's absolutely right for him to express his goodwill to us in this way. Consort Taizhen said calmly. In the past, she would never have been able to understand the political situation in the imperial court. But slander and abuse, as well as the criticism from the court, were the best medicine for a woman to grow up. Although she wasn't proficient in politics yet, she was definitely no longer the innocent girl who knew nothing about politics. Sister, in fact, if the King of Song expresses his goodwill to us, maybe, it's also a good thing for us. Yang Zhao said carefully, weighing his words. He could tell that his sister was very dissatisfied with the King of Song, which was reasonable. But Yang Zhao had a different view. Growing up in a gambling house, Yang Zhao was very familiar with this kind of relationship. The King of Song, Li Qingqi, was a prince of the Tang dynasty with high status and power. Although he was demoted by the emperor for a while, his identity as a prince was still there. The brother and sister had just come to the capital and had no support in the court. Although King Qi and the Yao clans supported them, according to Yang Zhao's investigation, the reputation of these two clans wasn't very good. They might not be purely helping them. If they could get the support of a prince of the Tang dynasty like the King of Song and Li Qingqi, it would be of great help to their situation in the court. Who was the most profitable person in the gambling house? The banker. Why? Because no matter who was gambling with whom, the banker would always be able to take all the money. Therefore, Yang Zhao thought that King Qi and the Yao clan were too dangerous. Pulling the King of Song over and benefiting from both sides would be the most helpful for the brother and sister. I've suffered so much and almost died because of him. I'm not willing to let him go just like that. But Consort Taizhen was unwilling to let the matter rest. Sister, what do you want to do? Yang Zhao asked carefully. Big brother, help me write a letter. Tell him that you've received the letter and ask him one question. Why was the ruler so arrogant and then respectful? Consort Taizhen said with a mocking expression. If she didn't vent her anger and mock Li Qingqi, she would never be able to take it lying down. Who? Hearing Consort Taizhen's words, Yang Zhao heaved a long sigh of relief. At the very least, his sister was still willing to write a letter. This meant that she wasn't ready to completely fall out with the King of Song. There was still room for reconciliation. All right. Chapter 127. In a grand hall in the King of Song residence, Lu Ting, the old butler, and Wang Chong were gathered together. However, the King of Song wasn't around. Wang Chong had said that if Consort Taizhen were to send a letter, Lu Ting was to intercept it and inform him to come over immediately. Also, he mustn't let the King of Song know of it. Chong Gongzi, what did you write to Consort Taizhen? Looking at the letter sent by Consort Taizhen, Lu Ting and the old butler stared at one another in dismay. I have read the letter. My lord, why are you so deferential now? This short sentence was filled with blatant sarcasm. That was the entire content of the letter. It wasn't surprising that Consort Taizhen would write a letter to mock the King of Song. Just based on the prince's fierce objections, it was normal for Consort Taizhen to write a letter to lash out at him. More importantly, after so many things had happened, the relationship between the two had deteriorated to the point that they were as incompatible as fire and water. The fact that Consort Taizhen was still willing to write a letter was already beyond their expectations. Without a doubt, Wang Chang's strategy was working. They had no idea what means he used to ease the relationship between consort Tai Zhen and the king of Song residence. Hee, I didn't do anything. I just wrote a poem for consort Tai Zhen. Wang Chong chuckled, displaying his youthful temperament at the right time. He didn't want to leave an impression on Lu Ting and the old butler that he thought too highly of himself. Poem. Lu Ting and the old butler were at a loss. They couldn't understand what kind of poem Wang Chong had written. What kind of poem could achieve such an effect? Inexplicably, even the old butler felt that the young man before him was too naive. His thoughts had transcended the boundaries of an ordinary person. Writing a poem for consort Tai Zhen. This was something that no one would have thought of. But why can't Her Highness know about it? The old butler asked doubtfully. Wang Chong declared in advance that he could not let the king of Song know. Even the old butler felt that it was difficult to keep up with Wang Chong's train of thought. You've also seen consort Tai Zhen's reply. There are some things that we should not trouble the king of Song and reduce the burden on the king of Song. If the king of Song is in trouble, isn't it normal for us to help him out? Wang Chong raised his head and laughed. Hearing Wang Chong's words, the old butler could not help but laugh. He didn't know why, but he suddenly had a good impression of this child. We'll do as you say. The old butler was the kind of person who was suspicious and difficult to get close to. Even back then, the old butler did not trust Wang Chong's father, Wang Yan. But for some reason, the old butler could not feel any enmity towards Wang Chong's third son, nor did he suspect him. This was the feeling that Wang Chong gave him. Lord Lu, thank you. Wang Chong looked at Lu Ting and said. I really don't understand. You're so young. How did you know that I can imitate the king of Song's handwriting? Lu Ting smiled bitterly. He looked at Wang Chong as if he was looking at a shrewd person. He was very close to the king of Song. It had been more than 10 years since they were young. They spent a lot of time together. In addition, when the king of Song had many things to do, Lu Ting assisted him. So he had unknowingly imitated the king of Song's handwriting. Few people knew about this. But for some reason, Wang Chong knew about it. Lord Lu, please. Wang Chong only smiled and did not reply. He kept urging Lu Ting. Lu Ting could not only imitate the king of Song's handwriting. Wang Chong knew that this scholar Lu was extremely intelligent. He was born with a strong ability to imitate calligraphy. He only needed to see 3 pieces of anyone's handwriting to be able to imitate 70 to 80% of it. And if he studied it more, he would be able to imitate it to perfection. The number 1 imitator of calligraphy in the Tang dynasty was this person in front of him. But this Lord Lu was also famous for keeping a low profile. Lu Ting shook his head. But he still carefully laid out the paper, ground the ink, and picked up the brush. Although he was joking and had a relaxed expression, the moment he picked up the brush, Lu Ting and the old butler's expressions turned grave. Although it was just a letter exchange, it was related to the most important matter in the entire imperial court. In the future, would the king of Song be able to return to the pinnacle and take control of the imperial court? Would King Qi and the Yao family be able to cut off the claws of the Ministry of War and the Ministry of Justice? Would the rift between the King of Song and the Holy Emperor, as well as consort Tai Zhen, be mended? The impact of this matter on the civil and military officials, as well as the impact of the future, all of this was decided by these simple letters. The two of them knew that it was already quite good that this crisis could be resolved to this extent. All of this was Wang Chong's credit. Regarding this matter, the two of them were completely helpless. They could only place their hopes on Wang Chong. Asking consort Tai Zhen to speak up for the king of Song was a ridiculous idea that they wouldn't even dare to dream of. Only Wang Chong, who was like a newborn calf that did not fear tigers and had a different way of thinking from ordinary people, dared to propose such an outrageous idea. Chong Gongzi, what should we do next? Lu Ting turned around and looked at Wang Chong. For a scholar of the imperial court to seek help from a child much younger than him might sound unbelievable, but that was exactly what Lu Ting did. Perhaps, he didn't realize it himself, but deep in his heart, he had already built up a deep trust in this child. "My lord, there is no need to be humble," these were the original words of Consort Tai Zhen. Even though he didn't know what Wang Chong wrote to Consort Tai Zhen, he knew that it was definitely words to fawn on her. However, this letter from Consort Tai Zhen wasn't easy to reply to. In the past dynasties, these words had always meant undisguised mockery. Most negotiations would end in failure. It wasn't easy to reply to these words. It would be even more difficult to change Consort Tai Zhen's mind and attitude towards him. This wasn't an easy task at all. However, Wang Chong's expression wasn't what everyone expected. He seemed to have predicted Consort Tai Zhen's reply before coming here, so he seemed to have a plan in mind. Leaning in close to Lu Ting, Wang Chong whispered into his ears. "Ah." Hearing Wang Chong's words, Lu Ting stared at him dumbfoundedly. "This isn't too good, right? What's not good about it? Lord Lu, you just have to think about it. This isn't the real king of song, so wouldn't it be fine?" Wang Chong laughed heartily in his heart. Lu Ting had always been winning from all sides, and this time, he finally had him in his grasp. "Lord Lu, I still have to cultivate. I'll have to trouble you with the rest." With that, Wang Chong left with a smile. Only Lu Ting was left behind with a long face. "Lord Lu, what did that child say?" the old butler asked curiously. "Sigh, I finally understand why he called me over but didn't inform the King of Song." Lu Ting smiled bitterly and told the old butler what had happened. The old butler couldn't help but laugh after hearing it. Not only did he not help Lu Ting, he even spoke up for Wang Chong, who had already left. "That child is right. This matter isn't suitable for His Highness to deal with. Scholar Lu, please bear more responsibility for His Highness's matter. I'll have to trouble you with the rest." The old butler flicked his sleeves and actually left, leaving Lu Ting alone in the main hall. Lu Ting smiled bitterly. After a moment of silence, he dipped his pen in ink and pondered for a moment. In the end, he imitated the tone of the King of Song and wrote a letter according to Wang Chong's instructions. "Send this letter to Yuzhen Palace. To Your Highness is an outstanding beauty. You look like a fairy, like a celestial being. You are rare in this world. I was rude before and didn't know that Your Highness is so beautiful. I have offended you. I hope Your Highness will forgive me. His Majesty is the ruler of the ages and Your Highness is the beauty of the ages. Both of them are rare in this world. I believe that with His Majesty's achievements, only Your Highness is worthy of him. I only hope that Your Highness will be able to help His Majesty with your virtue and talent. His Majesty will be worry-free, and his achievements will be unparalleled. Even if Your Highness blames me for my previous offense, I have nothing to say. I only hope that Your Highness and His Majesty will grow old together and enter the Yuzhen Palace as soon as possible. Yours sincerely, the King of Song, Li Chengqi." In Yuzhen Palace, Consort Tai Zhen was stunned as she read the letter from the King of Song. Although the previous letter only contained a few sentences, it was extremely sarcastic. Consort Tai Zhen had thought that the King of Song would fly into a rage after receiving such sarcasm. She didn't expect that it would be such a reply. "Sister, what did the King of Song write?" Outside the tent, Yang Zhao looked at Consort Tai Zhen, who was holding the letter in her hands and staring blankly into space. He was extremely curious, as if 100 claws were scratching at his heart. Ever since the queen received the letter, she had been standing there motionlessly. Yang Zhao was really curious about what the King of Song had written to make his sister behave like this. "Take a look for yourself." With a flick of her wrist, Consort Tai Zhen handed over the King of Song's letter. After reading the King of Song's letter, Yang Zhao was dumbfounded. Was this really written by the King of Song? "Yes," Consort Tai Zhen said faintly. She could still recognize the handwriting of the King of Song. This was undoubtedly the handwriting of the King of Song, Li Qingqi. She could tell that her cousin Li Zhao was surprised. But it wasn't just him. Even she was very surprised when she saw it. The previous poem was a compliment, and this letter from the King of Song was even more undisguised praise. When reading this letter, Consort Taizhen couldn't help but wonder if the King of Song had really changed so much because he didn't know how she looked. However, the King of Song's tone in the letter was very sincere, which made Consort Taizhen unable to doubt it. Moreover, it was a great compliment for her to be able to change the attitude of the King of Song in the court because of her beauty. Women were different from men. Praising a woman's beauty was the greatest flattery to her. There was no woman who did not take pride in her beauty. It was the same for Consort Taizhen. She had a lot of dissatisfaction with Song Qingqi. But at this moment, she suddenly couldn't hate him. You don't hit a smiling face. How could Consort Taizhen bear a grudge against someone who praised her? However, to be honest, what he said was not an exaggeration. Yang Zhao pondered for a moment and soon calmed down. Although the flattery in the King of Song's letter was a little undisguised, Yang Zhao didn't think that the King of Song's words were exaggerated. His cousin had been a national beauty since she was a child. Obviously, she was going to be a stunning beauty. The older she was, the more beautiful and obvious she was. Sometimes, when people of the same clan saw her, they couldn't help but feel a ripple in their hearts. However, ever since that mysterious warlock came to visit, all the people of the Yang clan knew that his cousin had the fate of a phoenix and the disposition of a palace. Everyone protected her and didn't allow her to come into contact with outsiders. His cousin was probably the only one who didn't know how beautiful she was. Back then, when he last saw his cousin, she was only 12 or 13 years old, but she was already an outstanding beauty. After marrying into Prince Shou's residence for so many years, to be honest, even Yang Zhao hadn't seen what his cousin looked like now. Chapter 128. However, what does the King of Song mean by this? These two letters clearly look different. Yang Zhao did not continue asking. Instead, he thought of the previous letter. At that time, he could not feel it. Now that he looked at it, the handwriting of the two letters was completely different. One was crooked. Even Yang Zhao's writing was better than his. The other was firm, forceful, and full of character. It was written by a completely different person. Moreover, why would that poem be stamped with the King of Song's seal? What is the King of Song up to? Moreover, that poem is very inappropriate. Is he not afraid of causing His Majesty to misunderstand? Yang Zhao was puzzled. You'll have to ask him about this. Consort Taizhen said calmly. She spoke calmly, but the fluctuation of her voice at the last moment revealed her true feelings. What letter the King of Song replied was no longer important. Consort Taizhen was only concerned about one thing. Who wrote that Song of Purity and Peace? Was there another Song of Purity and Peace and Song of Purity and Peace? This time, the King of Song finally received the second letter from Consort Taizhen. The three of them, the King of Song, Lu Ting, and the old butler, sat together. Consort Taizhen's letter was placed on the black gold hollowed-out dragon table. Along with this letter was Wang Chang's crooked Song of Purity and Peace. Consort Taizhen's letter and Wang Chang's Song of Purity and Peace had been placed side by side on the table for 2 hours. The three of them looked at it over and over again, their expressions indescribably fascinating. Good poem, it is indeed a good poem. Wang Yan, Wang Gengzhi, was a military general at the borders. For his son to be so talented in poetry, it is truly amazing. Lu Ting was the first to break the silence. He stared at the poem on the table and was not stingy with his praise. This poem was simple and unrestrained, beautiful but not overbearing. If it was placed in the 4 seas of the Central Plains, it would be an extremely beautiful and excellent work of art that would be passed down by people. Even Lu Ting had to admit that this poem was the one that crushed most of the scholars in the court. At least, he, Lu Ting, couldn't do it. However, for some reason, when Lu Ting said those words, the expression on his face was extremely interesting. It is indeed a good poem. Next to him, the King of Song nodded. The expression on his face was equally marvelous. He had no idea that Wang Chong had used his name to write a poem for consort Taizhen. It was a poem of love, praise, and even a little ambiguous. In front of Lu Ting and the old butler, he really didn't know where to put his face. The King of Song believed that his actions were upright and aboveboard. He had never done such a thing before. Even though this poem of love and praise for consort Taizhen wasn't written by him but by Wang Chong, it was still his, Li Qingqi's, seal on it. Thus, he couldn't say that he wasn't involved in it. It is fortunate that Chong Gongzi is intelligent. He intentionally wrote this poem in a crooked manner so that it isn't Your Highness's handwriting. This way, he can clear his suspicions and prevent any misunderstandings. In the end, it was Lu Ting who saw through Wang Chang's thoughts. Her Highness mustn't write this poem. If it were to fall into the eyes of those with ulterior motives, it would surely lead to rumors. However, Chong Gongzi is different. He is only 15, much younger than consort Taizhen. It is normal for a young man to be in love with her. Even if it were to be exposed in the future, no one would say anything about it. They would only say that it is the true nature of a young man. In this aspect, young Master Chong can be said to have thought through everything for Her Highness. At the end of his words, Lu Ting couldn't help but sigh. There were some things that one would only understand at the very end. When Wang Chong asked for the seal of the King of Song and wrote a letter to consort Taizhen in the name of the King of Song, but he refused to allow them to read it, they felt that it was a taboo. They didn't know what Wang Chong was up to. But now that they thought about it, this young man was intelligent. Everything he did was for the sake of the King of Song. The relationship between the two clans of the King of Song spanned several generations. From this aspect, this child was truly doing his best for the King of Song. This child is indeed considerate. Your Highness, I think that among the 3 generations of the Wang clan, this child can be groomed. The old butler spoke up. The old butler rarely spoke, but when he did, his words carried great weight. Hearing the old butler's words, even the King of Song was surprised. Most of the time, the old butler would remind him to be careful and not trust anyone easily. This was the first time he heard the old butler recommend someone to him, and this person was a 15-year-old child. Clearly, the old butler had a good impression of the 3rd son of the Wang clan. There's no need to rush this matter. Isn't the royal court discussing the 3 great training camps? I heard that the slots for the first batch are very tight. When the time comes, use my token to register this child. The King of Song smiled. Yes. The old butler nodded in acknowledgement. The 3 great training camps was established by His Majesty, and it was the first of its kind in the empire. Right now, it had attracted the attention of almost all the nobles and scions of the empire. However, due to the limited slots, the competition was intense. It wasn't something that could be described as tight by the King of Song. However, with the token of the King of Song, everything would be different. How is this possible? Yang Zhao's eyes widened, and his heart trembled. That child was only 14 or 15 years old. To be able to forge the number 1 sword in the world and write such a good poem? More importantly, why would he write a letter for the King of Song? Could it be that this child was highly regarded by the King of Song? For an instant, Yang Zhao felt as though his brain wasn't enough to comprehend the situation. He felt as though he had seen a ghost. What's going on? Consort Taizhen was even more surprised than Yang Zhao. Since her cousin didn't deny it, it was clear that he really knew the other party. But, how was this possible? Cousin had only been in the capital for a short period of time, how could he possibly know the person who wrote the poem for him? Sister, do you remember I told you that there was a fool who gave me 1,000 taels of gold? Yang Zhao asked straightforwardly. I remember. What's wrong? That fool is called Wang Chong. Yang Zhao said. Ah. Consort Taizhen was stunned as well. You mean to say that the person who wrote the poem for me is only a 15-year-old child? If he is indeed a descendant of the Wang clan. Yang Zhao lowered his head and said seriously. How is this possible? Consort Taizhen was astonished. She couldn't believe that the person who wrote the beautiful poem of purity and peace, who praised her as though she was a fairy, and who seemed to be yearning for her, was only a 15-year-old young man. But thinking about the crooked handwriting and the yearning between the lines, in the depths of her heart, Consort Taizhen believed it. If the person who wrote the poem of purity and peace was really a 15-year-old young man, wouldn't it be strange for his crooked handwriting to be the same? More importantly, if the poem was written by the King of Song, both she and the King of Song would surely be criticized. But if it was written by a 15-year-old young man who had seen her before, it wouldn't be a big deal. Just that, Consort Taizhen couldn't understand it. She had been residing in Yuzhen Palace all this while. How did that child know her appearance? All kinds of thoughts flashed across her mind. For the first time, Consort Taizhen suddenly felt a strong sense of curiosity toward the Wang Chong, whom she had never met before. What kind of young man was he to be able to spend so much money so casually? What kind of young man was he to be able to write such a poem and not conceal his yearning for her? More importantly, he was only a 15-year-old child. Chapter 129. Putting aside Consort Taizhen's movements, ever since he guided the first letter, Wang Chong led Shanhai and Meng Long out of the city. Young master, where are we heading to? The lush forest was filled with thorns and weeds that reached one's chest. It was extremely inconvenient to move around in the forest. Shanhai and Meng Long followed behind Wang Chong, cutting through the thorns along the way. Even their faces were scratched. This place was quite a distance away from the capital, and the ground was overgrown with weeds. There were also many towering trees as well, making it difficult to walk. Initially, when the two of them followed Wang Chong, they were excited when they heard that their young master was going to cultivate and absorb origin energy here. However, they realized that this wasn't the case after the past few days. Ever since the first day, their young master seemed to have been leading them around. Don't worry, you'll know when we get there. As Wang Chong spoke, he chopped down the thorns, shrubs, and weeds in the surroundings. Even though he was leading Shanhai and Meng Long around the mountain, Wang Chong didn't slack off in his cultivation at all. Might of the barbaric god was different from other cultivation techniques. As long as one could cultivate the 1 Dan origin energy art to 2 Dan, one wouldn't be limited to sitting on the ground. Even while cultivating, one could absorb origin energy from the surroundings to raise one's cultivation technique. The only difference was that the effects of might of the barbaric god wasn't as strong as when one was seated. Even so, it was still incredible. Wang Chong could clearly feel a refreshing sensation coming from his body as he walked. The forest is filled with lush vegetation. Cultivating here is indeed much faster than cultivating in the city. Wang Chong thought. Might of the barbaric god could be cultivated while walking, sitting, or lying down. It wasn't without reason that this cultivation technique was recommended as the #1 foundational cultivation technique in the military. Wang Chong's cultivation was still shallow. When he was walking, the effects of might of the barbaric god was only around 60% of what it was when he was seated. As his cultivation rose, this percentage could be increased. At the peak, he could even cultivate even when he was asleep. This was something that other cultivation techniques couldn't match up to. I wonder if I can find that spiritual vein. As Wang Chong cut his way through the thistles and thorns, a thought flashed through his mind. Wang Chong was looking for a spirit vein. This was also the reason why he brought Shanhai and Meng Long around the mountains for the past few days. There was a spirit vein just outside the capital. Not many people knew about it, but Wang Chong was aware of it. Spirit veins were rich in vitality. If one cultivated in such a place, their progress would be several times faster than in other places. No one knew why this was the case. They only knew that the formation of the spirit veins was related to the formation of the earth a long time ago. There were very few spirit veins around the capital, and most of them had already been occupied. However, the one Wang Chong found was different. This spirit vein was far more powerful than the other spirit veins. However, due to some special reasons, it could not be sensed from the outside. That was why no one had discovered it for many years. On the other hand, it would take many years before this spirit vein would be exposed, when the foreign steel cavalries entered the capital. When the spirit vein burst forth from the ground like a volcanic eruption, many people were dumbfounded. However, by then, it was already too late to make use of it. When Wang Chong entered the forest to cultivate the art of God of barbarians, he subconsciously thought of this massive wasted spirit vein. The unique terrain around the capital had trapped the spiritual energy. Until now, no one had discovered the existence of a hidden spirit vein, other than Wang Chong. Don't stop, continue forward. I'll clear the path, you all should pay attention to the surroundings to see if there are any venomous snakes. Wang Chong said. In the forest, the greatest taboo was venomous snakes. Even if one were to practice martial arts, a single bite from those venomous snakes would spell certain death. There was a reason why the spirit vein had not been discovered. One of the reasons was that venomous snake. Wang Chong vaguely remembered that there were more venomous snakes in the vicinity of the spirit vein. Compared to other places, there were more venomous snakes in the vicinity. After handing the task of guarding against the venomous snakes to Shen Hai and Meng Long, Wang Chong began searching for the location of the spirit vein alone. Might of the barbaric god was extremely sensitive to the movement of origin energy. For the past few days, Wang Chong had been roaming around the mountain using the might of the barbaric god to sense the changes in the concentration of origin energy in the air to determine the approximate location of the spirit vein. In this period of time, Wang Chong had already determined the east, south, and west directions. All that was left was the final direction. It's about time. After an unknown period of time, a thought flashed across Wang Chong's mind and he finally found the final direction. The moment he found the final location, the topography of the mountain range appeared in Wang Chong's mind, and he could roughly determine the location of the spirit vein. Let's go, that way. Wang Chong suddenly turned around and pointed to a direction. Then, he led Shen Hai and Meng Long in that direction. The area that Wang Chong had determined was a stretch of mountains, and there were large trees that required 2 men to encircle. There wasn't the slightest hint of a spirit vein in this area. However, Wang Chong could still remember the fluctuations of the spirit vein. In the air, Wang Chong felt a familiar fluctuation. Even though it was weak, it was undeniably there. Wang Chong knew that this spirit vein was extremely unique. Even if one found the spirit vein, one wouldn't be able to sense the presence of the spirit vein beneath one's feet. Only by walking to the nearest mountain peak would one be able to sense the dense origin energy. Wang Chong led Shen Hai and Meng Long to search the surrounding mountains. Roughly an hour later. When Wang Chong led Shen Hai and Meng Long up another mountain peak, his mind suddenly jolted. A familiar scent could be felt from the surroundings. However, this fluctuation was at least 10 times denser than at the foot of the mountain. Ha ha ha, I found it. Wang Chong was overjoyed. Shen Hai, Meng Long, clean up this area. We're going to clear a training ground here. From now on, I'll be practicing my martial arts here. Shen Hai and Meng Long glanced at one another. They couldn't understand why their young master was so excited. The origin energy here seemed to be slightly denser, but the two of them couldn't sense a thing at all. Could this be what their young master was looking for? The two of them were perplexed. However, even though they were perplexed, they wouldn't disobey Wang Chong's orders. Yes, young master. The two of them drew their sabers and followed Wang Chang's instructions. They walked around the area, clearing the thorny vines and chopping down the trees. He cleared a training ground for Wang Chong on the mountain. When this training ground is cleared, you will know why I chose this place. Looking at the back of the two, Wang Chong chuckled inwardly. It was unknown whether it was due to the unique nature of the vegetation or the soil, but the spiritual energy in the spirit vein was greatly obstructed, such that one could only sense less than 1/100th of it. Shenhai and Meng Long were still perplexed at the moment, but when the layer of soil on the mountain was shaved clean, they wouldn't think so anymore. About a few hours later, a simple, small training field on the top of the mountain was immediately cleared out. Seated in this small-scale training ground, Wang Chong began to circulate the might of the barbaric god in his body. He could clearly sense a surge of origin energy that was much denser than that of the other forests gushing in from the surroundings. If he were to cultivate here, not just might of the barbaric god, even his dragon bone art would be greatly enhanced. If I recall correctly, this place hasn't been bought yet. Wang Chong pondered as he cultivated. After spending 8 to 9 days, he finally found this spirit vein. Up till now, no one should have noticed this place yet. However, Wang Chong was clear that as he ventured deeper into the forest, it was only a matter of time before others noticed this place. This was the way of the world. If one didn't discover this place, nothing would happen. But if one were to discover this place, a large number of people would follow suit. The first step was to find this rare spirit vein, and the second step was much more complicated than that for Wang Chong. Shenhai, if I recall correctly, this should still be a barren mountain. No one wants to buy it. Do you still remember where this place is? Later on, make a trip to the Court of Judicial Review and buy this place as well as the surrounding mountains for me. Wang Chong suddenly said. Ah! Hearing Wang Chong's words, Shenhai and Meng Long were taken aback. If one wanted to, one could easily buy all of the barren mountains in the Tang dynasty. In fact, one could even buy all of the barren mountains in the empire. However, the prerequisite was that one had to be able to afford it. The cost of buying a mountain had always been expensive, needless to say, a mountain range. It was still fine if one wanted to buy those astounding ore veins, but if it was just a worthless piece of trash, one would have to pay for it. The cost of buying a mountain range was no small matter. Even the prestigious clans wouldn't dare to do so casually. Young master, the mountain range here isn't small. If we were to buy all of it, it would be a huge sum. That's right, young master. Going by the Empire's rules, the cost here wouldn't be less than 80,000 taels. Furthermore, it would only be for 30 years at most. Shenhai and Meng Long tried their best to dissuade him. In their view, this mountain range wasn't worth that much money. It wasn't worth it at all. The Empire's laws were unique, and there was a time limit to the purchase of any mountain range. If it was a ore vein, one had to dig it dry within 30 years. Dig as much as you could. It's your problem even if you accompany me. After 30 years, you would have to buy it again, and it wouldn't be at this price. Young master, could there be a ore vein beneath this mountain range? Shenhai asked carefully. After much thought, this was the only reason he could think of. It's not that. Wang Chong shook his head and stretched out a finger. It's something even more valuable than an ore vein. In this world, if one wanted to control one's own fate and change the fate of the Tang dynasty and the world, one had to have one's own influence. This was also the reason why Wang Chong asked his little uncle, Wang Mi, to help him find a few formidable imperial army instructors. This was a very vague idea, and it hadn't formed a complete system yet. However, just a moment ago, Wang Chong suddenly realized where his training camp should be located. When his little uncle found the instructors of the Imperial Army, this spirit vein would be the best base. As long as he could find a way to recruit a large number of truly loyal and reliable people, he would be able to use this spirit vein to train batch after batch of experts in the shortest amount of time possible. Batch after batch of people who were truly loyal to him and could be used by him came to him. Just like the troops he commanded in his previous life. Chapter 130. Shinhai quickly left. The mountain range in the distance was shrouded in mist, creating a tranquil atmosphere. Wang Chong took a glance before retracting his gaze. Closing his eyes, he sat cross-legged on the peak of the mountain and began cultivating might of the barbaric god. The origin energy here was much denser than the other forests. Wang Chong knew that the speed at which he could reach origin energy tier 7 here would be much faster than in the capital. Time passed slowly, and the affairs of the royal court were soon forgotten by Wang Chong. He focused his attention on his cultivation. In the forest, Wang Chong sat quietly, and his cultivation advanced with each passing day. With each passing day, Wang Chong's strength advanced by a notch. Compared to other martial arts, might of the barbaric god was much more effective in raising one's strength. The speed at which one could absorb origin energy from the air was far above that of fragrant elephant. As the number 1 martial art of the apocalypse in his previous life, might of the barbaric god became more and more useful the further one progressed. As Wang Chong's personal guard, Meng Long stood by the side, and the more he observed, the more astonished he became. Wang Chong's cultivation was unbelievably fast. Martial arts focused on the subtle effects of influence, but Wang Chong's improvement was visible to the naked eye. Meng Long had been in the military for many years, but he had never seen such a situation before. What kind of martial art is young master practicing? It's incredible. Meng Long was astonished. The feeling that Wang Chong gave him each day was different. He grew stronger with each passing day. Meng Long had been in the military for many years, and he had seen many things. However, he had never seen such a powerful martial art before. Even so, despite his astonishment, Meng Long didn't probe any further. Following Wang Chong, Meng Long had seen too many inconceivable things. There was always an explanation for everything. In Meng Long's view, there was a high chance that the young master's martial arts were bestowed to him by Duke Jiu. Only Duke Jiu would possess such a formidable martial art. Oblivious to Meng Long's thoughts, Wang Chong was fully immersed in his cultivation. The effect of the spiritual vein was far more powerful than he had imagined. The effect of cultivating on this kind of spirit vein was to gather essence qi. 1 day of absolute qi cultivation was equivalent to 3 days of ordinary cultivation. Strand by strand, the essence in Xiao Chen's body gradually gathered to the thickness of a pinky finger. Wang Chong could sense that he would be able to reach origin energy tier 7 in a short period of time. Upon reaching origin energy tier 7, one's origin energy would begin to flow from the marrow, bones, meridians to the skin, flesh, and blood. At this stage, the muscles of the whole body would become stronger, tougher, and full of explosive power. On the outside, the body would become more slender and well-proportioned. The yuan qi in the body would also become more condensed. Unknowingly, several days had passed. Boom! All of a sudden, Wang Chong's body jolted, and following a series of ka-cha-cha sounds, the origin energy in Wang Chong's body finally broke through origin energy tier 6 and reached origin energy tier 7. At the same time, Wang Chong's physical body also began to grow as though bamboo after a spring rain, growing several centimeters taller in an impossible situation. Wang Chong's body belonged to the slender category, and after growing taller, it became even more slender and well-proportioned. Origin Energy Tier 7, Origin Energy Tier 7. Young Master, you suddenly reached Origin Energy Tier 7. A delighted voice sounded beside him. The moment Wang Chong grew taller, Meng Long exclaimed excitedly. The first thing Wang Chong saw when he opened his eyes was the excited expression on Meng Long's face. When one's cultivation reached Origin Energy Tier 7, one's body would visibly grow taller. This was the most obvious sign of one's cultivation advancing. As an experienced person, Meng Long was extremely familiar with this phenomenon. Wang Chong nodded his head with a smile. Exerting his strength, he stood up from the ground. With this action, he could immediately tell the difference. Initially, Wang Chong's body was no different from those of his age. However, after his body grew taller, his posture became more upright, and he looked like a 16 to 17-year-old youngster. This time, he really resembled the persona Wang Chong had put on at the Blue Bottle Pavilion. Not bad, not bad. Meng Long assessed Wang Chong from head to toe, and a glint flashed in his eyes. The current Wang Chong's aura was much stronger than before. Even when compared to him, the difference wasn't as great as before. Young master, if the old master were to know that you have made such a huge improvement, he would surely be delighted. As Meng Long spoke, he suddenly sent a punch toward Wang Chong. Pang! In that instant, Wang Chong raised his right fist and received the punch head-on. Their fists clashed, and a powerful force burst forth from Meng Long's hands. The immense force sent Wang Chong flying, but Wang Chong somersaulted in midair and plummeted to the ground. 1000 descent. Young master, it seems like you have really reached Origin Energy Tier 7. A gleam flashed across Meng Long's eyes, and he was astonished. 1000 descent was a technique of Origin Energy Tier 7 martial artists. Upon reaching Origin Energy Tier 7, one would be able to open up many meridians, allowing one's origin energy to flow freely through one's body and gather at the soles of one's feet. Through this, one would be able to focus one's center of gravity on the soles of one's feet, thus allowing one to plummet swiftly from the sky. This was 1000 descent. It might seem like nothing much, but in actual combat, this seemingly useless technique allowed one to swiftly alter the trajectory of one's body, thus allowing one to dodge fatal blows. Knowing 1000 descent was nothing much, but for Wang Chong to be able to execute the 1000 descent so skillfully despite having just reached Origin Energy Tier 7, it was truly shocking. Even those veterans wouldn't be able to execute it as skillfully as him. Young master, take another move from me. Meng Long was getting more and more astonished. Without any hesitation, he leaped into the air as though a cannonball. At the same time, he executed an ordinary military fist technique, slaughter-crushing wolf, and charged toward Wang Chong with lightning speed. Meng Long, I'll get angry if you continue doing this. Wang Chong chuckled. Even though he knew that Meng Long was testing him, Wang Chong didn't back down at all. His dantian jolted, and as though a tidal wave, he gathered all of his strength into his arm. Boom! A powerful gale burst forth from his fist, and while Wang Chong was sent flying by Meng Long's immense strength, Meng Long also staggered backward. His wrist felt numb, and he couldn't help but be astonished. The might of Wang Chong's punch was inconceivably great. It had far exceeded the limits of Origin Energy Tier 7. Too powerful. With this kind of advancement, young master's future will be limitless. Even though Meng Long's wrist was numb from the impact, he couldn't help but feel excited. The higher the young master's cultivation, the more prosperous the Wang clan would be. If the old master were to learn of this news, he would surely be overjoyed. The young master was finally no longer the rebellious and profligate young master of the past. I don't want to fight anymore, I don't want to fight anymore. Your strength is too strong. You don't seem like an Origin Energy Tier 7 expert at all. Meng Long waved his hands as he shouted. He only wanted to test out Wang Chong's skills. If he were to continue fighting, he would be going all out. Given his Origin Energy Tier 9 pinnacle cultivation, it wouldn't be meaningful even if he were to win. Hee, that's fine too. I'm out of energy anyway. Leaning against a towering maple tree, Wang Chong chuckled. He had cultivated might of the barbaric god, and his strength far exceeded that of an ordinary Origin Energy Tier 7 expert. If Meng Long thought that he could suppress him easily due to his lack of strength due to his recent breakthrough, he would be gravely mistaken. It's a pity that the Herculean fist is too exhausting. Wang Chong thought. The might of the Herculean fist was immense. Even a Origin Energy Tier 9 pinnacle expert like Meng Long would be able to withstand a few blows from it. However, the price to pay was the same, it was too exhausting. Leaning against the tree, Wang Chong rested for a moment before he regained his strength. After reaching Origin Energy Tier 7, Wang Chong's first thought was to raise his cultivation. Now that my strength has reached Origin Energy Tier 7, I might be able to cultivate that swordsmanship. Wang Chong thought as he suddenly thought of a certain swordsmanship. Regardless of what kind of martial art it was, strength was the foundation. As long as he could raise his strength, he would be able to pursue something of a higher level. The first thing that came to Wang Chong's mind was swordsmanship. It was impossible for him to defeat an opponent with a sword barehanded. Furthermore, after obtaining Hyderabad and forging the Wuzi steel sword, swordsmanship naturally became an option for him. More importantly, it was different from the Herculean fist. Swordsmanship was powerful and lethal, but it wasn't as taxing on one's stamina as the Herculean fist. Thoughts flashed across Wang Chong's mind, and he naturally thought of a certain swordsmanship single-character consecutive slash. After his reincarnation, Wang Chong had sorted out his meridians. After mastering the Herculean fist, the swordsmanship that was most suitable for him was the single-character consecutive slash. This ultimate technique was concise, efficient, lethal, and extremely powerful. Given Wang Chong's current realm, it was difficult for him to bring out all of Wang Chong's strength. More importantly, this swordsmanship was incomparably imposing. Its attacks were as swift and vicious as a tidal wave, making it impossible for one to block it. As long as one wasn't able to seize the initiative and was suppressed in a single move, one move after another would follow until one was killed. But correspondingly, due to its overwhelming might, it was difficult to cultivate. More importantly, cultivating the single-character consecutive slash had a high requirement on one's strength. Just Origin Energy Tier 6 cultivation wasn't enough. One had to reach Origin Energy Tier 7 first. This is the swordsmanship. Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil as he quickly made up his mind. Unlike the Herculean fist art, the single-character consecutive slash was created by Wang Chong after he experienced countless battles of blood and fire. He had survived countless perilous situations and created it. This single-character consecutive slash was an amalgamation of the strengths of countless sword techniques. It was the result of Wang Chong's painstaking efforts to perfect it. Wang Chong didn't create many martial arts himself, and the single-character consecutive slash was one of them. It carried the distinct characteristics of Wang Chong's original world. In the army, Wang Chong had required all low-ranking officers, from 5-man squad leaders to 100-man squad leaders to ordinary lieutenants, to learn it at the very least. The moment the single-character consecutive slash was activated, all targets in a straight line would be within its attack range. The momentum it exerted would destroy everything in its path until the last target was slain. Chapter 131. Unlike other martial arts, the single-character consecutive slash was created by Wang Chong himself. The principles behind its creation, meridian circulation, pulse circulation. Wang Chong knew every single detail of it like the back of his hand. For Wang Chong to cultivate such an ultimate technique, it was much faster than other ultimate techniques. Leaning against the towering tree, Wang Chong drove the thin origin energy in his body to open up a brand new pathway in his body. It wasn't easy to open up this pathway, but Wang Chong had plenty of experience in this field. What others would require hundreds or even thousands of tries to master, Wang Chong was able to accomplish easily. Usually, he would only need 2 to 3 tries before he could succeed. This was the benefit of creating one's own martial art. However, even though it was easier to cultivate it now, the process of creating it back then was extremely arduous. Wang. A low rumbling sound could be heard from Wang Chong's body. Soon, he entered a state of tranquility. Young master has become a martial arts fanatic. If old master were to see this, he would definitely not believe it. Meng Long was taken aback. Recovering from his daze, he walked over to stand guard for Wang Chong with a smile. The mountain peak gradually regained its tranquility. After an unknown period of time, Wang Chong's body jolted. Finally, he had cleared up the main meridian circulation of the single-character consecutive slash. Just as he was about to clear up some minor details, a soft sound suddenly echoed in his ears. Someone's here. Wang Chong opened his eyes and looked down the mountain. The footsteps were getting closer and closer. The other party didn't seem to be intending to conceal their presence. In just a moment, Wang Chong heard a familiar voice through the gaps in the dense forest. It's indeed Shanhai. Wang Chong chuckled. Shanhai went down alone, but when he came back, he wasn't alone. Instead, he brought along a few guards from the Wang family residence, as well as a few bare-armed commoners. Every single one of them carried tools with them, and it was clear that they were here to help Wang Chong construct this training ground. He, young master. I've already taken care of the mountain range. We'll buy the entire area. Also, I've brought the person with me. We can start to build a few houses here. Shanhai was in a good mood. As he climbed the slope, he waved at Wang Chong and the others. Ha, you've worked hard. Wang Chong also laughed. Not only did they bring tools, but Wang Chong also saw that they had brought fire and food. Suddenly, he gasped in surprise. When he got closer, Shanhai finally noticed that something was different. Young master, you seem different this time. Yeah. Wang Chong laughed. The last time he left the mountain, he was at Origin Energy Tier 6. Now, he was at Origin Energy Tier 7. Just as he was about to tell Shanhai, Wang Chong's expression suddenly changed. A strong sense of danger rose in his heart. Be careful. Wang Chong's stern warning was like a bolt of lightning tearing through the void. He raised his head abruptly and turned his head to look at a dense forest on Shanhai's right. At the same time, Shanhai and Meng Long also noticed something amiss. The expressions of the two Wang clan guards changed dramatically. Which female assassin is it? Young master, be careful. Both of them turned pale with fright. To think that the female assassin who assaulted Wang Chong the other day would follow him here. This was especially so for Shanhai. He was both ashamed and regretful. His expression was extremely ugly. No matter how slow he was, he could tell that the female assassin must have been following him all the way here. Unfortunately, even after so long, he hadn't noticed anything. Protect the young master. Shanhai, Meng Long, and the other Wang family guards bellowed. Without any hesitation, they dashed toward the direction of the forest. Get out of the way, you're no match for him. Wang Chong shouted anxiously. If Ablonadin and Arloja were here, that would be the case. With just them, it was impossible for them to stop that Eastern Island's female assassin. At least you have some self-awareness. A light harumph sounded from the forest. The voice was indescribably elegant, but in Wang Chong's ears, it was the sound of death. So. The leaves swayed, and a black shadow shot out from the treetops on the right like an arrow. Her movements were like that of a ghost. Not only was she fast, but she was also like a ghost, twisting and turning, completely unpredictable. Wang Chong's judgment of her wasn't wrong. Amidst the towering ancient trees, this was her battlefield. Executing the specter's steps here was much more unpredictable than on flat ground. Peng peng peng. The black silhouette flashed by, and the three Wang family guards that Shanhai brought with him were sent flying like rubber balls. In a one-on-one fight, no one was a match for her. So. With just a slight shake of her body, the Eastern Island's female assassin easily evaded Shanhai and Meng Long, heading straight for Wang Chong. From start to finish, it didn't even take a single breath. Seeing this, Wang Chong's scalp went numb, and he felt an intense threat of death looming over him. Wang! Without any hesitation, Wang Chong immediately executed the single-character consecutive slash. However, he didn't slash at the Eastern Islands' female assassin. Instead, as though a bolt of lightning, he dashed forward. Having crossed blows with her once, Wang Chong knew that this Eastern Islands' female assassin was a true martial realm expert. In this forest, even if everyone were to work together, they wouldn't be a match for her. Li Zhuxin, aren't you going to come out? Feeling the incomparably sharp sword intent trailing him like a shadow, Wang Chong couldn't hold it in any longer. He abruptly turned to the surroundings and shouted loudly. As though responding to Wang Chong's voice, a deep and calm voice suddenly sounded from the forest, "Lady, stop." Boom! Before the voice could finish, several zhang behind Wang Chong, a powerful aura suddenly burst forth. Boom! A deafening explosion sounded, and a raging gale blew, causing countless trees to bend. The Eastern Islands' female assassin's head was facing the ground. When her sword struck the ground, it was as though she had struck an invisible wall. The immense force sent her flying several dozen zhang away. Li Zhuxin. Shen Hai and Meng Long saw the figure that suddenly appeared behind Wang Chong, and they were dumbfounded. This person was the middle-aged gray-robed man whom Wang Chong had hired for 5,000 gold taels from the home of the four seas. Not only was Li Zhuxin's hiring price ridiculously high, he even had a bunch of lousy rules, such as coming and going as he pleased. After receiving the first sum of money, he left on the same day. This left the two loyal guards, Shen Hai and Meng Long, extremely dissatisfied. How could this be considered as hiring an expert? It was more like hiring a master. Initially, the two of them were adamantly against Wang Chong hiring him, but they couldn't go against their young master's temper. Just that, they didn't expect Li Zhuxin to be hiding here after disappearing for so many days. This was especially so for Meng Long. He had followed Wang Chong for more than 10 days in the depths of the mountain. Yet, despite such a long period of time, he didn't notice Li Zhuxin's presence in the vicinity at all. Boom! Just as Shen Hai was contemplating over the matter, another violent gale swept through the forest, causing one to be unable to open their eyes. The Eastern Islands' female assassin attempted to use the specter steps to bypass Li Zhuxin and head straight for Wang Chong. However, she was intercepted by Li Zhuxin once more. At the center of the forest, the two of them engaged in an intense battle. Looking at Li Zhuxin in the forest, Shen Hai was astonished. At this moment, the strength that Li Zhuxin displayed was even greater than that of the tea house at the home of the four seas. Young master has really found a powerful guard. To think that I thought that he had left. Shen Hai was astonished. At this moment, he felt that the young master's decision was right. 5,000 gold taels might be a huge sum, but how could it compare to the lives of a few people? In this aspect, the young master's eye of discernment was far more formidable than his. Scatter! Scatter! All of you, scatter! Suddenly, Shen Hai realized something and hurriedly shouted. Regardless of whether it was Li Zhuxin or the female assassin, they were both true martial realm experts, and their strength was simply too high. The gale that the duo stirred up felt as though it was a sharp knife slapping on their faces. A battle of this level wasn't something that the commoners could withstand. The crowd panicked and hurriedly retreated. Shen Hai and Meng Long didn't dare to get too close either. Leading the other guards, they hurriedly retreated. A battle between true martial realm experts wasn't something that they could interfere in. Young master, be careful. Hurry over. Shen Hai and Meng Long shouted to Wang Chong while protecting the commoners. Wang Chong replied, but he didn't make a move. For someone as powerful as the Eastern Islands' female assassin, who possessed the specter steps and formidable assassination techniques, numbers didn't pose much of an advantage to her in a forest. The previous battle was more than enough to prove this point. His eyes were completely focused on the battle between the true martial realm experts. In the forest, a violent gale blew, and leaves fluttered in the air. In order to open up a training ground in the forest, Wang Chong had dug up a portion of the soil. However, at this moment, the soil had been swept up by the shockwaves from the battle between the duo, blurring one's vision. On top of that, the fallen trees made it difficult for even Wang Chong to get a clear view of the situation between the duo. Just that, Wang Chong was still able to vaguely make out a few things from his previous life. There's something strange about this woman. Wang Chong narrowed his eyes. Even though he couldn't get a clear view of the duo, he could sense that the aura of the Eastern Islands' female assassin was in disarray. Furthermore, compared to the last time he met her, her cultivation seemed to have weakened. Could the flaw in the specter steps have erupted? Wang Chong was perplexed. The specter steps was a complete cultivation technique, and the higher one's cultivation, the greater the flaw. Towards the end, one's cultivation might even go berserk and explode. To a certain extent, this was actually a method used by the superior in martial arts to control the inferior. However, even though the specter steps had its flaws, based on Wang Chong's understanding, it shouldn't have erupted so quickly. Furthermore, for some reason, this Eastern Islands female assassin gave Wang Chong the feeling that she had sustained some internal injuries. It was just that she had suppressed them. This is really weird. I remember that our Loja and the others didn't injure her previously. Wang Chong was perplexed. Lady, aren't you going to stop? Li Zhuxin's voice sounded from the center of the forest. Compared to the Eastern Islands' female assassin, Li Zhuxin's figure was much easier to capture. Chapter 132. Li Zhuxin, capture her. A glint flashed across Wang Chong's eyes as he suddenly commanded. Even though Wang Chong had sensed it quickly, he was still a step too late. So, the Eastern Islands female assassin made use of Li Zhuxin's burst of strength to launch her final slash, and in an instant, she was already a dozen zhang away from Wang Chong. This time, she did not turn around. Instead, she used specter steps to propel herself through the trees and dashed out without looking back. Where do you think you're going? A glint flashed across Li Zhuxin's eyes. Without any hesitation, he dashed forward. Wait a moment. Wang Chong wanted to stop Li Zhuxin, but before he could say anything, Li Zhuxin had already dashed in the direction where the Eastern Islands female assassin had disappeared. By the time Wang Chong spoke, the duo had already disappeared. All that was left was the howling wind and the leaves fluttering in the air. Fast. Wang Chong slowly retracted his outstretched palm. The Eastern Islands female assassin was fast, but Li Zhuxin wasn't slow either. The two of them were using speed's secret arts of completely different styles. As soon as the duo disappeared, a momentary silence fell upon the forest. Young master, what do we do now? Meng Long subconsciously turned to look at Wang Chong. Li Zhuxin hadn't captured the female assassin yet. This meant that the group wasn't safe yet. Young master, I'm sorry. I was the one who lured him over. Shanhai lowered his head, his face full of shame. He was so engrossed in his excitement that he didn't notice when he was being followed by the Eastern Islands female assassin. Now isn't the time to talk about this. Wang Chong waved his hands casually. Actually, this female assassin doesn't have much to do with you. Her mission was not completed. Even without you, she would have found other ways to follow us. Unless we don't go up and down the mountain or enter the city. Otherwise, it's only a matter of time before she finds us. The reason why I hired Li Zhuxin from the House of Four Seas is to prevent such a situation. Right now, what we need to consider is what we should do next. A pensive look appeared on Wang Chong's face. Li Zhuxin had moved too quickly, leaving an opening in Wang Chong's defense. While the Eastern Islands female assassin's fighting prowess was beneath Li Zhuxin's, the specter steps was one of the secret arts of assassins, allowing her to move about unpredictably. On top of that, the environment of the forest was extremely beneficial for her to execute the specter steps. Thus, Li Zhuxin was unable to take him down for the time being. Young master, why don't we leave first? It's no longer safe here. Meng Long suddenly spoke up. That female assassin had left him horrified. Without Arloja, Ablonadon, Toba Guayuan, and the others, they weren't a match for her at all. In an environment like the forest, she didn't even need to fight with them. She could easily bypass them with a light flash. In terms of agility, even Ten Shinhais and Meng Longs wouldn't be able to catch up to her. No. Wang Chong refused without hesitation. This place is too far from the main road. Without a day or two, it's impossible to get there. With such a long time and such a long journey, it's impossible for us to walk out of this forest. Furthermore, this will only create more opportunities for her to assassinate us. It's better for us to stay here. Besides, we're leaving. What about them? As Wang Chong spoke, he pointed to the farmers that Shinhai brought with him. The previous situation had left them dumbfounded, and one of them was trembling in fear. Upon seeing the situation, Shinhai and Meng Long frowned. Wang Chong's words weren't without reason. If they were to bring them along, their speed would be too slow. They wouldn't be able to walk far in an entire day. Yet, they couldn't bring them along. They were in the depths of the forest. Putting aside whether they knew where they came from or not, just the tigers, leopards, and wolves here were enough to pose a huge threat to them. Furthermore, there was a limited amount of rations. If they were to run out of rations or get separated in the forest, it would be no different from the Wang clan killing them. If Madame were to learn of this, who knew how furious she would be? But it was impossible for them to stay here. Let's stay here for now. Wang Chong pondered for a moment before saying Li Zhuxin has already chased after her. If he can't catch up to her, he will return soon. Even if we stay here, he will be able to find us in time. Right now, we can only be considered safe with him around. There was one more thing that Wang Chong didn't say. He mustn't leave the matter of the Eastern Islands' female assassin behind. Beneath his feet was a rare and large spirit vein. Who knew how many aristocratic families would be willing to pay with their blood or even their lives for it, unless he didn't want it anymore. Otherwise, he would have to find a way to resolve the matter of the Eastern Islands' female assassin. Shinhai and Meng Long chopped down the trees in the surroundings. Her specter step specializes in leveraging the strength of others. As long as we chop down these trees, the prowess of her specter steps will be greatly reduced. Wang Chong suddenly said. Yes, young master. Shinhai and Meng Long nodded. This was the best solution they could come up with. Even though they weren't a match for the Eastern Islands' female assassin, it wasn't too difficult for them to chop down a circle of trees. As long as they gathered together, they should be able to hold on for some time on flat ground. Come, get up. Did you hear what young master said? Hurry up and chop down the trees here. Shinhai and Meng Long immediately instructed the group behind them. This time, under the threat of death, everyone's enthusiasm was very high. Since the tools were readily available, they quickly got to work. While the group was busy chopping down the trees in the surroundings to reduce the opportunities for the female assassin to leverage her strength, Wang Chong didn't remain idle either. Let's take a look around. Wang Chong thought. Just by chopping down trees wasn't enough to stop the female assassin. Wang Chong knew that he had to think of another way. After leaving the peak of the mountain, Wang Chong surveyed the surroundings carefully. When he passed by a slope, Wang Chong's eyes suddenly lit up. There's indeed such a thing. Wang Chong glanced at a short shrub with purple flowers on it. Reaching out, Wang Chong plucked a few round fruits from the shrub and crushed them lightly. Holding them in his hand, he walked up the mountain. Hua! Not too long after Wang Chong reached the peak, rustling sounds could be heard. Mr. Li is here. Li Zhuxin. Li Zhuxin. This is great, everyone was delighted. Even Shinhai and Meng Long heaved a sigh of relief. Their tense hearts finally relaxed. As long as Li Zhuxin was around, everything would be fine. After witnessing Li Zhuxin's incredible strength, everyone had absolute trust in him. Mr. Li, did you manage to capture the female assassin? Delighted, Shanhai immediately rushed over. Wait a moment. Of everyone present, only Wang Chong frowned. He vaguely felt that something was amiss. He. Suddenly, a woman's soft laughter rang out. It was indescribably strange in the forest. What a pity. I'm not your Mr. Li. From a gap in the trees, a figure fell from above. Dressed in a black tight-fitting robe, her face was covered, and she held a sword in her hand. Even though her figure was graceful, in the eyes of the crowd, she looked no different from a black god of death. So, without any hesitation, with a flash of light, the Eastern Islands' female assassin charged toward Shanhai at an incredible speed. Shanhai, be careful. Lord Shen, be careful. Upon seeing this sight, everyone was frightened out of their wits. Chang. Without any hesitation, Meng Long and the other guards of the Wang residence drew their swords and charged forward. However, there was a figure who reacted even faster than them. At the instant the Eastern Islands' female assassin's voice sounded, Wang Chong already knew that something was amiss. Before anyone could react, Wang Chong had already executed the single-character consecutive slash and dashed forward. Once the single-character consecutive slash was activated, the instantaneous speed wouldn't be inferior to any speed-type secret skill. In fact, it might even surpass it. The speed at which Wang Chong executed this move was even faster than Meng Long and the others. Boom! Wang Chong's consecutive slashes struck the Eastern Islands' female assassin's saber before she could stab at Shanhai. As swift as a bolt of lightning, Wang Chong's consecutive slashes struck the Eastern Islands' female assassin's saber. Clang! The incident that happened half a month ago in the Wang family's study replayed itself. With a flash of light, the tip of the sword was sent flying. Before the sharpness of the Wuzi steel sword, there weren't many weapons that could withstand it head-on. You're courting death. The Eastern Islands' female assassin's eyes froze for a moment, as though a tiger whose fangs had been plucked out. However, in the next instant, intense killing intent flashed across her eyes. Chi! A cold gleam flashed, and a sharp aura burst forth from the Eastern Islands' female assassin's body. With one hand holding onto the broken sword, she thrust it toward Wang Chong while her other hand swiftly whipped out another dagger from her waist and stabbed forward like a venomous snake. As an assassin, strength, speed, and dexterity were all indispensable. In a short instant, while others could only launch a single strike, an assassin could launch 2 or even 3 strikes. This was something that others couldn't match up to. So, the blade of the sword swept across, but the Eastern Islands' female assassin's confident strike actually missed. Wang Chong's figure was like a waterfall, and he actually managed to leap into the air in this impossible situation. Chi! An intense pain came from her shoulder. The Eastern Islands' female assassin was injured. In that instant, the Eastern Islands' female assassin couldn't believe her eyes. She was actually injured. Injured by a weakling who was far beneath her. She had never seen such swordsmanship before. The swordsmanship that Wang Chong executed was something she had never seen before. I'll kill you. Humiliation, shock, and rage mixed together, and the Eastern Islands' female assassin suddenly erupted. A powerful surge of origin energy burst forth from her body. Protect the young master. Stop her. Even if I have to die, I can't allow her to get close to the young master. Not in the blink of an eye, Shanhai's strength struck the Eastern Islands' female assassin first, followed by Meng Long and the other guards of the Wang residence. Everyone exerted their full strength. Be careful. She's injured. Wang Chong suddenly shouted. Even if I'm injured, I can still kill you. The Eastern Islands' female assassin gritted her teeth. Hong Long, a powerful force burst forth, and Shanhai, Meng Long, and the others were sent flying. The Eastern Islands' female assassin flung them aside and charged straight for Wang Chong. If you want to kill me, come at me. Wang Chong shouted. He executed a series of consecutive slashes, and as though a silver waterfall, he dashed a dozen zhang away. Behind him, the Eastern Islands' female assassin was in hot pursuit. But this time, even Shanhai, Meng Long, and the others could tell that the female assassin was indeed injured. Compared to before, her speed was clearly much slower. Furthermore, if one were to take a closer look, her movements were clearly not as agile. Li Zhuxin really injured her. A thought flashed across everyone's mind, and they suddenly came to a realization. Even though Li Zhuxin had lost her, he had still managed to injure her. Her current fighting prowess had clearly been weakened significantly. Chapter 133. This is bad. Suddenly, Shanhai's eyes twitched and his heart sank. After receiving a blow from the female assassin, Wang Chong didn't rush over to meet up with them. Instead, he dashed into the depths of the forest. Even a group of them weren't a match for the female assassin. If he were to fight her alone, wouldn't he be courting death? Young master is in danger. Everyone, stop her. Seeing that Wang Chong was in danger, the few of them charged toward the Eastern Islands' female assassin without any regard for their own safety. However, they weren't martial artists who specialized in speed, so how could they possibly lose to the Eastern Islands' female assassin? Humph. The Eastern Islands' female assassin sneered coldly. She didn't even bother to look behind her. It would be a miracle if these guards of general and minister clans could catch up to her. In her eyes, there was only Wang Chong. However, the only thing she hated about this lad was that she had no idea what kind of swordsmanship he was using. His speed was incomparably bizarre, and the way he utilized his strength was completely different from any cultivation technique she knew of. He was able to change the direction of his movements freely, and it wasn't inferior to her specter's steps at all. Even with her capability and in such a favorable forest, she was still unable to catch up to him. Let's see where you can escape to. The Eastern Islands' female assassin gritted her teeth. That ridiculously strong gray-robed middle-aged man had already been lured away and would not leave in a short period of time. Moreover, even if he came back, as long as he captured this unfilial son of the surnamed Wang, he would not be able to bear with him. Pang! Stepping on a tree as thick as a wooden barrel, the Eastern Islands' female assassin made use of this force to charge toward Wang Chong as though an arrow released from a bow. But all of a sudden, a dull groan sounded, and before everyone's astonished gazes, the Eastern Islands' female assassin suddenly fell uncontrollably from the tree, crashing onto the ground. SSS. At the same time, a pitch-black triangular-headed snake, which had fused with the tree trunk, leaped down from the tree. With a ka-chi sound, it swiftly darted into the forest and disappeared. Careful, it's a black mamba snake. At the back, a peasant exclaimed in shock. He pointed at the fleeing snake with a horrified expression. The guards of the Wang residence didn't know about that snake, but he happened to know about it. This snake was extremely venomous, and upon contact with blood, its throat was sealed. Viper. It's a poisonous snake. Shanhai, Meng Long, and the others also came to a realization. Before entering the mountain, young master had told them that there were many poisonous snakes here and that they had to be careful. Who could have thought that even though there were venomous snakes, their target wasn't them but the female assassin? Due to her superior cultivation technique, the female assassin was able to fly here and there in the forest. She didn't expect to be bitten by a venomous snake. Wonderful. This is retribution. Delighted, Shanhai and Meng Long drew their swords and led their guards forward, surrounding the Eastern Islands' female assassin tightly. However, they did not attack. A centipede dies, but it doesn't fall down. No one knew how much strength this female bodyguard had left, or how much power she would have when she counterattacked. Don't worry, she doesn't have the strength. Wang Chong had been using the single-character consecutive slash to weave through the forest, avoiding the pursuit of the Eastern Islands' female assassin. But at this time, with a flip, he easily jumped down from the tree. With a flip of his palm, he carefully scattered the shell of a fruit in his palm. You plotted against me. No matter how slow the Eastern Islands' female assassin's reaction was, upon seeing this sight, she felt both anxious and furious. Back in the Wang residence's study, Wang Chong had used a sleeping gas grenade to plot against her. This time, he had used some unknown means to use a venomous snake to plot against her. Both times, she was plotted against by a weakling who was far weaker than her. This made the Eastern Islands' female assassin seethe with anger. The path of an assassin was one that was unscrupulous as long as it could kill the other party. Yet, this teenager seemed to be even more unconventional than her. An assassin attempting to assassinate the other party ended up being plotted against by the other party. If news of this were to spread, even if she wasn't poisoned, she would probably be laughed to death by her peers. Don't be angry, the snake venom will act up faster if you are angry. Wang Chong chuckled. As he spoke, he walked over and wiped away the scent of the fruit on his body. Bastard! The Eastern Islands' female assassin cursed with an awful complexion. She wanted to go all out and kill Wang Chong, but she just couldn't muster the strength to do so. Wang Chong was right. The angrier she was, the faster the venom would act up. At this moment, even her lips had turned black. The Eastern Islands' female assassin couldn't do anything at all. She could only clutch the area above her injured ankle tightly in an attempt to slow down the effects of the venom. So this woman is already at the end of her tether. Seeing the female assassin's face darken, everyone knew that Wang Chong was speaking the truth. Shenhai, Meng Long, and the others calmed down. They stepped forward and placed their swords on the female assassin's neck. Do whatever you want to me. The Eastern Islands' female assassin raised her head and closed her eyes. She had given up on resisting. She had already sustained severe internal injuries in the battle with Li Zhuxin, and now that she was bitten by a venomous snake, she had already lost all ability to resist. Even though she felt indignant, there was nothing she could say now that things had come to this. It's a pity, I was intending to spare her life. Suddenly, a deep voice, accompanied by a light sigh, sounded from the surroundings. The grey-robed Li Zhuxin walked out from behind a camphor tree that required 2 men to wrap their arms around it. He was still wearing the tattered grey robe that Wang Chong had seen at the home of the Four Seas. The 5,000 gold taels seemed to have gone down the drain, not a single trace of it could be seen on him. Li Zhuxin, you've been here for a long time. Meng Long suddenly realized what was going on. I've been here for a long time. Rather, I've never left. I've been in the vicinity all this while, waiting for her to come over. Li Zhuxin said nonchalantly as he slowly walked over. Then why aren't you making a move? Shenhai also flew into a rage. Hee, don't worry, I've been in the vicinity all along. She isn't a threat at all. Besides, hasn't young master been cultivating recently? Only through life and death experiences will one be able to bear fruit. Isn't she the best practice target? You. The duo wanted to refute Wang Chong, but they couldn't find any words to say. Li Zhuxin smiled silently. However, when his gaze fell on Wang Chong, his heart couldn't help but waver. He didn't fall into the trap of luring the tiger away from the mountain. He knew that the female assassin would surely return once she wanted to deal with Wang Chong. Li Zhuxin's original intention was that as long as the other party was in danger, he would be able to interfere and stop the battle. However, the final outcome was something that he couldn't comprehend. Wang Chong didn't even need the other party to make a move. He had already dealt with this powerful and elusive female assassin by himself. Li Zhuxin, I couldn't tell that you're a man who has tender feelings for the fairer sex. Oblivious to Li Zhuxin's thoughts, Wang Chong teased as he spoke. How is it tender feelings for the fairer sex? It's useless even if you kill her. It's only a matter of time before the person who wants to deal with you sends someone over. Doesn't Gongzi want to know who sent her over? Li Zhuxin said. There's no need for that. I already know who sent her over. Wang Chong said impassively. His words immediately attracted the gazes of Li Zhuxin and the poisoned Eastern Islands female assassin. I see. It seems like I was thinking too much. Saying so, Li Zhuxin immediately retreated to the side, not saying a word. He realized that his employer this time was much more considerate than he had imagined. If you want to kill me, just kill me. Why are you wasting your breath? The Eastern Islands female assassin bellowed furiously. However, her rage only served to intensify the effects of the poison. Stinging pain shot through her entire body, and the Eastern Islands female assassin's vision darkened before she fainted. After an unknown period of time, which felt like an instant yet felt like countless centuries, the Eastern Islands female assassin finally regained consciousness from the darkness. A voice that seemed to be near yet far sounded by her ear, "Young master, why did you save her? That woman is a dangerous person. What's the use of killing her? She's just a tool. But she's still in danger. What if she doesn't give up and makes another move? Don't worry." That young voice chuckled as he waved his hands to stop the argument. A wave of fatigue washed over the Eastern Islands female assassin. She slowly opened her eyes, and a ray of light shone in through the curtains. With a single glance, the Eastern Islands female assassin saw the busy farmers in the surroundings, chopping down trees and repairing buildings. After which, the Eastern Islands female assassin saw Wang Chong standing with his hands behind his back and Meng Long walking behind him. It seemed like the voice she had just heard was from them. "You didn't kill me." The Eastern Islands female assassin was taken aback. When she finally recovered from her shock, her face was filled with astonishment. This sudden voice immediately attracted everyone's attention. You're awake." Wang Chong chuckled as he turned around. "Wang." The Eastern Islands female assassin subconsciously tried to stand up, but in the next instant, she felt a tightening sensation coming from all over her body. Only then did she realize that her whole body was tied up and she was firmly trapped on a big tree. I thought that you're that female assassin. Do you believe that I won't kill you with a single slash?" Meng Long walked down the tree with widened strides and aimed his sword at the female assassin's heart. The relaxed atmosphere a moment ago suddenly turned tense. Silence reigned in all directions as countless gazes turned to look at him. "So be it, do you think that I'm afraid?" The Eastern Islands female assassin said coldly as she turned her head to the side. Do you think that I don't dare to?" Meng Long said as he prepared to stab his sword in. Even though they didn't die under the hands of this female assassin in the previous battle, all of them were injured. This woman's strength was simply too strong. If it wasn't for the fact that she was determined to take the young master, if not for the fact that she was determined to capture the young master, enough. "Release her." Wang Chang's voice sounded from behind. Even though he felt indignant, Meng Long still flicked his sword and broke the ropes binding the Eastern Islands female assassin. The Eastern Islands female assassin was bewildered. Rubbing her arms, she realized that the snake venom in her body had been neutralized. Around her, there were large patches of unknown medicinal herbs and some purple leaves. All kinds of juices were squeezed out of them, covering the ground. It seemed like they had gone through a complicated process to neutralize the poison in her body. However, the origin energy in her body hadn't fully recovered yet, and she felt weak all over. "You're going to release me just like that?" Chapter 134. Do you think that you can still make a move? Misunderstanding the female assassin's intentions, Meng Long retorted impolitely. The moment Meng Long said those words, the atmosphere in the forest changed abruptly. Countless gazes turned over from all directions. One of the gazes was especially powerful. Following that gaze, the Eastern Islands female assassin saw the gray-robed middle-aged man on the right side of the forest. He was currently leaning against a tree with his arms crossed, staring at her silently. The eyes of the Eastern Islands female assassin dimmed. She finally understood why he wasn't afraid of her. With this person around, given her current condition, she didn't stand a chance at all. Hurry up and leave. They aren't so protective of you every single time. I believe that you should be able to tell that there are some people who are willing for you to stay behind. Li Zhuxin said calmly. As he glanced at the Eastern Islands female assassin, there was a unique gleam in his eyes. The Eastern Islands female assassin struggled for a moment before she finally stood up. Her heart was filled with uncertainty, apprehension, and longing. Step by step, she cautiously walked out of the room. Even when she reached the edge of the forest, no one dared to make a move on her. Who? The Eastern Islands female assassin heaved a long sigh of relief. It wasn't joy, but an indescribable feeling. Flinging her sleeves, the Eastern Islands female assassin quickly disappeared down the mountain. A long time later. I didn't expect you to let her off. After the Eastern Islands female assassin disappeared into the distance, Li Zhuxin suddenly stared at Wang Chang's back and said. That female assassin thought that he was the one who had let her off, but that wasn't the case. When Wang Chong found some medicinal herbs to save her, he was astonished as well. He. Naturally, I have my own considerations for not killing her. Wang Chong only chuckled. He didn't explain the matter in detail. Of course, it wasn't that he was being compassionate, but that he had other considerations. On top of that, this Eastern Islands female assassin was related to the 10 islands of Japan, as well as the 10 great empresses on those islands. In his previous life, even though Wang Chong had heard of the 10 great empresses, he didn't have any interactions with them. Back then, when the foreign cavalry invaded, the 10 islands of Japan suffered the least damage. Wang Chong heard that something special had happened on those islands. In this regard, Wang Chong needed a guide, and killing her wouldn't do him any good. What's more, Wang Chong was sure that she would come looking for him. Wang Chong had predicted that the Eastern Islands female assassin would return to look for him, but Wang Chong didn't expect her to arrive so quickly. Not too long after disappearing from the foot of the mountain, the Eastern Islands female assassin staggered out from the edge of the forest, appearing before everyone's eyes. Are you still unrepentant? I spared your life, yet you still dare to come back. Upon seeing this female assassin, Shen Hai and Meng Long flew into a rage. Together with the other Wang clan guards, they drew their swords and stood guard before Wang Chong. Wait! Wang Chong waved his hands to stop the crowd. Wang Chong couldn't sense any killing intent from this Eastern Islands female assassin. She probably isn't here to kill me. Speak, what do you intend to do? As Wang Chong spoke, he stepped out from the crowd and glanced at the Eastern Islands female assassin. Her body was still weak at the moment, but with Li Zhuxin around and the single-character consecutive slash, Wang Chong wasn't afraid of her making a move. I can't go back anymore. The Eastern Islands female assassin's face paled. Previously, when I left your Wang clan, I was injured by the pavilion master. This mission has failed once more, so it's impossible for me to return. An assassin doesn't have a third chance. Furthermore, my specter steps will only lead to death. You asked your pavilion master about the specter steps? Wang Chong suddenly asked. A bizarre expression appeared in his eyes. Surely this female assassin couldn't be so naive as to really do that? Yes. Under the black veil, the Eastern Islands female assassin lowered her head and pursed her lips tightly. This time, Wang Chong's expression was truly spectacular. He knew that the people of the Eastern Islands were different from those on the mainland, but Wang Chong didn't expect her to be so direct. But thinking about it, this was indeed something they would do. I'll die if I go back, and I'll die if I don't. The pavilion master will definitely send men to hunt me down in the capital. I won't be able to escape from the capital. Furthermore, there's a huge flaw in the specter steps. Right now, only Gongzi can save me. The Eastern Islands female assassin struggled internally. Eventually, her knees caved in and she knelt onto the floor, lowering her proud head. No matter what, Gongzi, please save me. After which, she knelt on the floor motionlessly, as though she had given up all resistance. In that instant, everyone was dumbfounded. Even Li Zhuxin stood there in a daze. Recalling the viciousness, sharpness, and viciousness of this female assassin, Zhang Xian felt that it wasn't too long ago. Yet, at this very moment, she was actually kneeling on the floor, pleading for Wang Chong to save her. Her attitude before and after was completely different. I can't believe that this woman would kneel before young master. Shen Hai and Meng Long were rendered speechless. Looking at the young master beside them, they couldn't help but feel admiration for him. Despite living for more than 30 years, this was the first time they had seen something like this happening to their young master. If it was anyone else, they would have long lost their lives, needless to say, for this female assassin to kneel before him and plead for his help. However, what Shen Hai and Meng Long didn't know was that at this very moment, Wang Chong's thoughts were completely different from theirs. This woman is so straightforward, so quick to react, and so pragmatic. Wang Chong thought. There was a huge flaw in the specter steps, this was undeniable. Wang Chong wasn't lying to her. On top of that, the stronger one was, the greater the threat they posed. If she wanted to be safe, she would have to stop her cultivation and stop pursuing greater strength. Even so, as time passed, she still couldn't escape death. Even though Wang Chong didn't know what happened when the Eastern Islands female assassin returned to the assassin organization, it was clear that it was happening. The severity of her specter steps had worsened. Others might not know of this. But she should be aware of it. That was why after thinking about it, he knelt down in front of her without any hesitation. What benefits do I get from helping you? Wang Chong said impassively, his face impassive. I have nothing to repay you with. If you save me and tell me how to resolve the flaw in my specter steps, I'm willing to serve you for eternity. Kneeling on the floor, the Eastern Islands female assassin gritted her teeth, drew out a dagger from her waist, and sliced the tip of her index finger. Crimson blood immediately gushed out from the tip of her finger. I swear on the Black Dragon that I, Yasamiya Ayaka, am willing to serve Gongzi for eternity. I will be Gongzi's left and right arms to kill any opponent. As she spoke, the Eastern Islands female assassin drew a talisman in the air with her blood and tapped on her glabella. Who? The surroundings were silent, but a bizarre wind blew within a radius of several dozen zhang toward Wang Chong from the direction of the Eastern Islands female assassin, Yasamiya Ayaka. In an instant, the bizarre wind disappeared. A commotion broke out among the crowd, unable to comprehend what was going on. Wang Chong couldn't put his finger on it either. It felt like something was amiss, but at the same time, nothing seemed to have changed. Just that, when he raised his head to look at Yasamiya Ayaka, he felt an inexplicable connection between the two of them. It's a mental type art. A thought flashed across Wang Chong's mind. His soul was injured, and he hadn't fully recovered yet, so he wasn't able to sense it. However, Wang Chong was certain that it was some kind of mental type art. What in the world are you up to? Black dragon, white dragon, whatever. Hurry up and leave. Shen Hai finally couldn't take it anymore. He stared at it for a long time, but he couldn't see anything at all. The only thing he could see was that this woman was trying to fool him. Wait a moment. You're Yasamiya Ayaka, right? Get up. I promise you. Gongzi? Shen Hai and Meng Long exclaimed in shock. Don't worry, there won't be a problem. Wang Chong waved his hands casually. Walking up to Mayase Ayaka, he stretched out his hand and said, I accept your request. Get up and rest for a while. You'll find that your strength will recover much faster here than in other places. Mayasame Ayaka subconsciously stretched out her hand, intending to grab Wang Cheng's arm. But in the next instant, she suddenly realized something and retracted her hand as though she was fleeing. An extremely unnatural reaction appeared on her body, as though she wasn't used to having physical contact with others. Yes, Gong, yes, master. Mayasame Ayaka lowered her head respectfully, completely different from the haughty and arrogant attitude she had a moment ago. Wang Cheng was taken aback for a moment before he came to a realization. As an assassin, it was likely that she was unaccustomed to having physical contact with others. Heavens! There's no need to stand on ceremony. Go and cultivate by yourself. Wang Cheng flung his sleeves and said. Standing up, Mayasame Ayaka walked over to the tree where she was tied up, sat down, and began cultivating. Looking at Mayasame Ayaka's figure, Shanhai and Meng Long shook their heads. The feeling this female assassin gave them was completely different from others. It was just a moment ago that she was so haughty and arrogant. Yet, at this moment, she was able to say the word, master, so naturally. This was something that most people in the Tang dynasty wouldn't be able to do. In the Central Plains, there were those who addressed one as Old Master, Kamahagongzi, and Young Master. However, there were very few who addressed one as Master. The more powerful one was, the more arrogant they would be, and the less likely they would address another as Master. However, this didn't seem to apply to this female assassin at all. Wang Cheng took in the reactions of the duo, but he didn't bother explaining the matter. The customs of the Eastern Islands were completely different from those of the Tang dynasty. In the Tang dynasty, Mayasame Ayaka's reaction might seem bizarre. However, in her homeland, Wang Cheng felt that it was normal. Meng Long, don't think too much into it. I still have something for you to do. Wang Cheng suddenly said. After dealing with Mayasame Ayaka and keeping the spirit vein in his hands, Wang Cheng suddenly recalled another matter. Most of the places where spirit veins could form had extraordinary terrain. Wang Cheng could vaguely recall that there was a top-notch iron mine not too far away from this spirit vein. However, Wang Cheng only remembered that there was a mine in this area. As for which area it was, he had no idea. Meng Long would have to lead a group of men to investigate, excavate, and search for it. The reason why Wang Cheng remembered this place was because the iron mine seemed to be nourished by the spirit vein. The quality of the ores within was extremely high, making it an excellent material for war. Chapter 135. Soon, Meng Long left the mountain with a few guards from the Wang family residence. Shanhai had also returned to the Wang clan, intending to call a few more people over. Even though his two trusted aides had left, leaving behind a bunch of commoners, Wang Cheng wasn't worried at all. Even so, Wang Cheng wasn't worried at all. With Li Zhuxin and the newly recruited assassin Mayasame Ayaka around, Wang Cheng didn't have to worry about any danger at all. As for Mayasame Ayaka, Wang Cheng wasn't so foolish as to tell her everything he knew. Wang Cheng only told her the first level of the secret art. Even though this level wasn't sufficient to make up for the flaws in Spectre steps, it was sufficient to alleviate the injuries Mayasame Ayaka was suffering from. Mayasame Ayaka should be able to sense this as soon as she cultivated it. After Shanhai and Meng Long left, Wang Cheng didn't hold back. He first cultivated the single-character consecutive slash to the pinnacle before starting on the dragon bone art. Under the effects of the underground spirit vein, Wang Cheng's mastery of the dragon bone art sped up significantly. Wang Cheng was extremely familiar with all of this. Under the effects of the dragon bone art, Wang Cheng's bones became tougher, denser, and more resilient. This was the effect of the tiger bone. The stronger the bones, the greater the endurance. A leopard would run out of energy after 100 meters, but a tiger would be able to chase after its prey. That was what Wang Cheng was feeling at the moment. Even though the effects of cultivating the dragon bone art weren't too obvious, far from might of the barbaric god, Wang Cheng could sense something deeper. His stamina and endurance were improving. Roughly half a month later. Wang! A bizarre sensation surged from within his body, and Wang Chang's body jolted. Under the effects of the spirit vein, he had finally broken through his bottleneck, reaching Tiger Bone 2 Dan. A surge of new energy was born within his body, and his bones seemed to be one with one. It was as though an explosive force could burst forth from any part of his body at any moment. This is the Tiger Bone 2 Dan. Wang Chong opened his eyes and felt that they were even brighter. In the past, he could only see 2 or 3 mountains ahead. But now, he could clearly see 5 or 6 mountains ahead. His field of vision had increased significantly. With a twitch of his ears, Wang Chong could hear a lot of sounds that he couldn't hear before, and the range of his hearing had also increased a lot. In the distance, a deer perked up its ears on a boulder, listening warily to the Harken's voice. Wang Chong could hear the birds gliding down from the treetops. Refining the tiger bone to a certain level can indeed greatly improve a cultivator's vision, hearing, smell, touch, and so on. Wang Chong stood on the empty ground, thoughts flashing through his mind. This time, it wasn't just in terms of strength. Wang Chong felt that he was full of energy, which was completely different from before. Of course, this was just a feeling that couldn't be seen from the outside. Master! A voice suddenly sounded in his ears. Turning around, Wang Chong saw Mayasame Ayaka's bright eyes. She was still dressed in tight black clothes and a black veil, seemingly used to this attire. What's wrong? Wang Chong abruptly snapped out of his daze. Master, there's something I would like to tell you. Mayasame Ayaka said. She seemed to be filled with worries and worries. Oh. Wang Chong's interest was piqued. This was the first time she had taken the initiative to speak to him. Do you remember that we assassins have a group? What's wrong? Wang Chong asked curiously. This group is known as the Assassin Pavilion. The Spectre Steps was taught to me by the head of our Assassin Pavilion. Now that I've betrayed him, he'll surely find a way to kill me. Also, since the mission isn't over yet, he'll surely find someone else to kill you. In fact, he might even do it himself. The Assassin Pavilion will never accept a mission failure. Mayasame Ayaka said worriedly. Ha, is he very formidable? Wang Chong chuckled, not paying much heed to the matter. Very formidable. Mayasame Ayaka replied seriously. Even more formidable than Mr. Li. Wang Chong chuckled as he pointed to Li Zhuxin. Mr. Li isn't too bad, but I'm afraid that he isn't as formidable as our boss. Mayasame Ayaka's reply surprised Wang Chong. In an instant, the smile on Wang Chong's face vanished, replaced by a grave expression. Even Li Zhuxin couldn't help but turn his gaze over. Wang Chong knew how formidable Li Zhuxin was, and he had witnessed it with his own eyes. Yet, Mayasame Ayaka said that the Assassin Pavilion's boss was even more formidable than him. Wang Chong's face finally warped. If the Assassin Pavilion's boss was really that formidable, he was at least a true Martial Realm 8 Dan expert, perhaps even a profound Martial Realm expert. If that was the case, things wouldn't be as simple as they seemed. However, even though the boss is powerful, he rarely makes a move on his target. Furthermore, the rules of the Assassin Pavilion are different from other places. Before finding my whereabouts and confirming my death, he won't send anyone to deal with you. Before he finds me and ascertains whether I'm dead or alive, he won't send anyone to deal with you. So, I will hide myself carefully for the time being. Master, you must be careful as well. The Assassin Pavilion's boss is extremely fearsome. Mayasame Ayaka said grimly. Seeing how grave Mayasame Ayaka's words were, and how grave her face was, as if she was on the verge of death, Wang Chong couldn't help but chuckle. Master, what are you laughing at? Mayasame Ayaka suddenly felt a little embarrassed. I'm serious. I know. Wang Chong couldn't help but burst into laughter. You said that before he finds you and ascertains whether you're dead or alive, he won't make a move, right? Yes. Mayasame Ayaka replied seriously. How long do you think you can last without them noticing? Wang Chong asked once more. 3 months. No, if I work hard, I should be able to reach 3.5 months. That's my limit. Mayasame Ayaka pondered for a moment before replying. Hehe, there's no need to go through so much trouble. Why would there be a need for 3 months? To me, a single month is more than enough to solve this problem. Wang Chong knew that he was confident in his words. Ah! Mayasame Ayaka widened her eyes in shock as she stared at the young man before her in shock. Impossible. Mayasame Ayaka's first reaction was that it was impossible. Wang Chong would find it hard to deal with even her, needless to say, the Assassin Pavilion's boss. Ha, you can't be thinking that I'm alone, right? Your Assassin Pavilion's boss has a bunch of subordinates. Do you think that I would be so reckless as to fight him barehanded? Wang Chong chuckled. The Assassin Pavilion's boss was indeed formidable. If Wang Chong were an ordinary person, he would be helpless against him. But Wang Chong wasn't an ordinary person. Mayasame Ayaka was right. He had to be careful against top-notch experts. However, Wang Chong wasn't one to resign himself to his fate. You intend to mobilize the guards from the manor? It's useless. The guards in the master's manor, the 2 monks, the archer, Mr. Li, and I might not be a match for the assassins from the Assassin Pavilion. Mayasame Ayaka shook her head. She soon understood Wang Chong's intentions. As a descendant of ministers and generals, Wang Chong did possess an advantage that ordinary people didn't. However, these advantages were useless against assassins. Wang Chong's thoughts were extremely dangerous, and Mayasame Ayaka couldn't help but worry. Ha, you've misunderstood my intentions. Wang Chong waved his hands and hurriedly denied it. Why would I use the guards of the manor to deal with assassins? These guards were personally hand-picked by my father from the battlefield. Even the death of a single one of them would make my heart ache. Naturally, I have to use the Imperial Army to deal with assassins. Hong Long. Even Li Zhuxin couldn't help but reveal a shocked expression on his face. The huge forest suddenly fell into a deathly silence. The people who were eavesdropping in the surroundings froze, and their eyes were filled with shock. The Imperial Army was the guardian of the Emperor, tasked to protect the capital. Only the current Holy Emperor had the authority to mobilize them. Yet, the young man behind them said that he could mobilize the Imperial Army. This was a taboo. You're actually able to mobilize the Imperial Army? Unknowingly, Li Zhuxin had walked over and assessed the young man before him in astonishment. But of course, most of it was disbelief. Wang Chong was just a teenager. Even if he came from a clan of generals, it was impossible for him to mobilize the Imperial Army. Wang Chong simply smiled, not bothering to explain. In his mind, he thought of Zhao Fengchen. He was already the commander of the Imperial Army. The master of the Assassin Pavilion might be powerful, but there was no way he would be stronger than the future commander of the Imperial Army. As for mobilizing the Imperial Army, there was a group of assassins in the capital. It was only right for the Imperial Army to be mobilized after such a huge incident. No matter how formidable an assassin was, it was impossible for them to stand against an army, not to mention, the elite Imperial Army. Do you know the location of the Assassin Pavilion? Wang Chong suddenly asked. Mayasame Ayaka subconsciously nodded with a dazed look on her face. Even though there isn't a fixed location, there will be a monthly gathering at a specific location. That's enough. Wang Chong replied calmly. However, he had already made up his mind to inform Uncle Li Lin of the matter after he returned. He would leave this matter to Uncle Li Lin. Mayasame Ayaka didn't know that the fate of the organization she was in had been decided by a single word from Wang Chong. After cultivating for a few more days on the peak of the mountain, the guards that Shen Hai dispatched from the Wang residence finally arrived. Gongzi, Mr. Tuoba has sent me to invite you over. He said that the saber has been forged, and Gongzi will have to deal with the rest. Madam has also sent word that something has happened in the residence, and she requests Gongzi to return to the residence as soon as possible. A guard of the Wang family knelt on one knee on the ground, his expression respectful. Oh! Upon hearing those words, Wang Chang's eyes fell into a daze. Unknowingly, so much time had passed in the mountain, and Tuoba Guiyuan's narrow, thin, thick saber had already been forged. Now that he thought about it, it should have been done long ago. The experts of the imperial army had probably trampled through the doorstep of the Wang family residence, and they were already impatient from waiting. As for his mother, thinking about it, it had indeed been a long time since he had gone back. As a son, strength was important, but he couldn't ignore his family as well. Mr. Li, make some preparations. Let's descend the mountain. Wang Chong suddenly said. It was finally time to descend the mountain. Chapter 136. It had been a long time since Wang Chong had returned to the capital. Now that he was back from the mountain, he suddenly had a different feeling. The mood in the capital suddenly became rather strange, one of poetry reciting. Although there had been people who had composed poems in the past, they had never reached such a level. Gongzi still doesn't know, right? Now, there was a poem circulating in the palace about the number one beauty in the world, Consort Taizhen. It was said that the poem was beautifully written. Do you see that place, young master? Places like the parlor of clouds and rain, the parlor of spring breeze, the parlor of jade, the parlor of immortals, and the parlor of beauties are everywhere in the city. They're like bamboo shoots after the rain. Many of them aren't new either. They're old restaurants and tea houses that followed the trend and changed their names. Some even hang the poem on the door and make it into a plaque as a couplet. Amidst the surging crowd, the clueless Wang clan guard asked with great interest. Wang Chong did not look carefully at first, but after being reminded, he looked carefully. Sure enough, Wang Chong saw some extremely familiar scenery. On the left, clouds think of clothes, flowers think of beauty. On the right, the spring breeze caresses the balustrade, and the dew is dense. On the banner, parlor of clouds and rain. In another restaurant, there was a completely different picture hanging on the wall. Left, if not for the Jade Mountain. Right, we will meet under the moon at the Yaotai. Horizontal line, Beauty House. Each and every one of them was a huge plaque. Beauty wine. Beauty wine. A great hero should drink the wine of beauties. Fairy tea, come, 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 drink a bowl, you will feel refreshed. Loud shouts came from the two restaurants and tea houses facing the street. Hearing these shouts, Wang Chang's expression suddenly became very interesting. Not many people knew that he had helped the king of song and that he had written a poem. At least, the Wang family didn't know about it. The sudden change in the capital caught everyone off guard, and they didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But soon, Wang Chong smelled something. It's very difficult for ordinary people to know about the affairs of the palace. This matter was most likely spread by that person in the Yuzhen palace. At least, she agreed. Wang Chong thought to himself. After cultivating on the spirit vein for more than a month, he didn't care much about the affairs of the court. However, since Consort Taizhen was willing to post this poem, it meant that Consort Taizhen had accepted his kindness. In other words, although the king of song and the consort Taizhen had disagreements and conflicts with his matchmaking, at least the impact of this matter had been minimized. The fact that consort Taizhen was willing to spread this poem meant that she didn't care much about the king of song. The fact that such words could be heard in the marketplace meant that the consort Taizhen incident's influence in the court had been minimized. If there were no accidents, this matter could be considered over. This song of purity and peace is indeed powerful. Wang Chong faintly smiled, and then he began to walk toward the Wang clan. Upon returning to the residence, the first thing Wang Chong did was to summon Tuoba Guiyuan. Gongzi, the saber you wanted has been forged. In Wang Chong's room, Tuoba Guiyuan was holding onto a 7-chi long saber. His head was lowered, and his eyes were deeply sunken. It seemed like he had spent a lot of time on it. It's heavy. The first thought that struck Wang Chong upon receiving the saber was how heavy it was. If one didn't possess immense strength, it would be impossible for one to move this saber. At the very least, it would be impossible for those below Origin Energy Tier 6 to use this saber. It's indeed different after adding a June of Hyderabad ores. Wang Chong thought. The Wuzi steel saber forged by Tuoba Guiyuan was almost identical to the one on Wang Chong's blueprint. In certain aspects, it was even more demanding than Wang Chong's. Just from the color contrast, brightness, texture, and uniformity, Wang Chong could tell that the quality of this saber was much higher than the 4 Wuzi steel sword embryos he forged back then. As expected of the #1 swordsmith in the future, Wang Chong was impressed. Wang Chong's Wuzi steel saber was forged by a few high-tier blacksmiths in the Wei residence, and his younger sister, Wang Xiaoyao, was also a part of it. However, this combination clearly couldn't match up to Tuoba Guiyuan, the #1 swordsmith in the future. In terms of pursuing certain details, Wang Chong realized that Tuoba Guiyuan shared the same ideals as him. In fact, in certain aspects, they were even striving for perfection. Not bad. You've worked hard. Wang Chong nodded as he looked at Tuoba Guiyuan. As long as Gongzi is satisfied. Tuoba Guiyuan replied with a respectful expression. To Wang Chong, Tuoba Guiyuan was the #1 swordsmith in the world. However, to Tuoba Guiyuan, Wang Chong was the true #1 swordsmith. Tuoba Guiyuan had immersed himself in the field of weapons for a long time, but he had never seen anyone who could design a weapon of this level. After forging it, Tuoba Guiyuan gave it a try. The slash and slash prowess were extremely powerful, far surpassing other weapons that Tuoba Guiyuan had seen before. Furthermore, it was extremely smooth to use, making it impossible for one to stop. Needless to say, put it down. To a saber cultivator, this saber would definitely possess an incredible allure. You can go and rest first. Leave the rest to me. Yes, Gongzi. Tuoba Guiyuan bowed and left quickly. What is hard is easy to break. This was an irrefutable logic. Tuoba Guiyuan's initial forging was completed. However, such a saber was far from what Wang Chong required. The subsequent steps, quenching and tempering, were the most crucial. Without these 2 steps, the 7 feet long narrow, thin, and thick saber might not even be able to reach the battlefield and encounter those powerful experts and weapons. It wouldn't be long before it broke because of its rigidity. However, quenching and tempering could greatly increase the toughness of a weapon, preventing it from breaking too easily. If one didn't know these 2 steps, even if one were to imitate the outer appearance of Wang Chong's weapon, one wouldn't be able to obtain the essence of the saber and it would still break easily. After placing the 7-chi long saber in his room, Wang Chong first washed up and changed into a clean set of clothes. After which, he ran over to pay his respects to his mother. Mother. Wang Chong bowed respectfully to his mother. I'm sorry for worrying you over the past few days. In Wang Chong's heart, his mother would always be the most important. Hee, it's good that you're back. Madame Wang sat on a dark-colored wooden armchair. Upon seeing Wang Chong's return, she pointed to the seat beside her and said, "Sit." Wang Chong obeyed and sat down. However, he was curious. He received a message from his mother at the spirit vein. If it wasn't something important, his mother wouldn't call for him. "Chonger, I called you back this time. I have something to discuss with you." Madame Wang's expression softened. Even though Wang Chong was only 15 years old, he rarely caused her to worry. This was unimaginable in the past. "Chonger, do you still remember how you said that you wanted to enter the Kunwu training camp? Wang. A single stone raises 1,000 ripples. Wang Chang's heart jolted. He abruptly raised his head with a solemn expression. He had thought about why his mother would look for him, but he didn't expect it to be this matter. Mother, is there any news regarding the Kunwu training camp? Wang Chong asked with a concerned expression. The Consort Tai Jin incident and Regional Commanders incident were closely related to the royal court, but the 3 great training camps were the most closely related to him. In his previous life, because he didn't enter the 3 great training camps, Wang Chong had to take many detours. Eventually, due to his talent in the art of war, he caught the eye of the elders and became the Grand Marshal of the Central Plains. However, it was already too late by then. His defeat was already decided. The heavens help those who help themselves. One's fate had to be grasped in one's own hands. Thus, while Wang Chong paid attention to the matters of the royal court, Wang Chong also paid attention to the 3 great training camps. In Wang Chong's plan, the 3 great training camps was an important part of it. Madame Wang wasn't aware of Wang Chong's thoughts. She only thought that he was desperate to enter the 3 great training camps. The matter regarding the 3 great training camps has been decided, and they are currently constructing 3 large-scale training camps. Also, the slots have been confirmed. The first batch of slots is extremely tight, and all of the clans are hoping to send their children there. In the capital, all of the prestigious clans are working hard on this matter, hoping to snatch a slot for the training camps. I remembered that you said that you wanted to enter the Kunwu training camp, so I called you over. Madame Wang said. How can that be? Hearing his mother's solemn tone, Wang Chang's eyebrows twitched. He was surprised. The slots for the 3 great training camps were tight, but in Wang Chang's memories, it shouldn't have reached such a level yet. When the 3 great training camps were first established, the scope of attention wasn't small. It was only after the first batch that the prestigious clans began to chase after them. If what his mother said was true, then the attention that the 3 great training camps garnered was much greater than what he remembered in his previous life. You don't have to worry about the slots for now. 2 days ago, your big uncle sent me a message. The King of Song has already secured 2 slots for you. However, this isn't a guarantee. I heard that the Holy Emperor has given his approval for the training camp this time around, and no one is allowed to tamper with it. If you wish to enter the training camp, you have to pass an examination. The slot that the King of Song has given you isn't a guarantee either. So, I intend to find you a teacher. The King of Song, the King of Song. Wait a moment, Mother, what did you just say? Teacher? What teacher? You want to find me a teacher? Wang Chong was astonished. Her words were still fine at the start, but the tone of her words changed completely. Why did she bring up the topic of the Kunwu training camp to a teacher? Indeed. Madame Wang didn't think much of it. She thought that Wang Chong was just a little embarrassed. There are quite a few prestigious clans in the capital, and the competition is too intense. I asked around, and the madams in the capital are all running around worrying about this matter. Some of them even went to the royal palace to plead with the concubines. Given how intense the competition is, I've thought about it for a long time, and I think that it's better for you to find a teacher. This is also the main reason why I brought you back. With a teacher, nothing will go wrong. Otherwise, if you fail, our Wang clan is a clan of generals. Our Wang clan is a clan of generals. At that time, we will lose face greatly. Madame Wang said with a worried look. Chapter 137. Mother, there's no need. Wang Chong quickly said. Why? Madame Wang was surprised. Wang Chong's reaction was far beyond her expectations. Chonger, I'm doing this for your sake. Actually, I should have hired a master for you long ago. It was only because of my father's absence and my negligence that this happened. Listen to your mother this time. Mother, wait a moment. The Kungwu training camp hasn't officially started yet, right? Let's talk about it after some time. Wang Chong hurriedly dodged the question. Wang Chong knew that his mother meant well, but with his situation, he didn't need a master at all. On the other hand, he could be someone else's master. Bringing a master over, not knowing his background or depth, would instead restrict Wang Chong. He would have to consider many things, and he would not be able to do as he pleased. For example, Wang Chong would have a lot of concerns about the secret alchemist teams in the Imperial Palace and the Prince's mansions. After spending so much time together, he would eventually be discovered. If that kind of secret was exposed and the Wang family was implicated, it would cause a huge uproar. What do you mean wait a while? By that time, it would be too late. Nonsense. Listen to me this time. I'll find a master for you. It's settled then. Madame Wang finally put on a stern face and displayed the authority of a parent. By the time the 3 great training camps started, what was the point of looking for a master? Wasn't that just fooling around? Ah, mother, I'll tell you the truth. Actually, I already have a master. Seeing that his mother was going to make decisions for him, Wang Chong finally confessed. You have a master? Madame Wang's face was filled with astonishment. Yeah. Mother, haven't you noticed that my strength has increased a lot? Didn't I defeat Duke of Su's grandson, Su Xian, at the Four Quarters Embassy? Actually, I already have a master. It was uncle who arranged it for me. At the critical moment, Wang Chong hurriedly summoned his uncle, Li Lin. His uncle was an expert from the Imperial Army. His presence would definitely be convincing. Your uncle. As expected, when she heard Uncle Li Lin's name, her mother frowned deeply, but she did not pursue the matter further. If it's a master that your uncle found for you, then it's possible. Your uncle is in the Imperial Army, and there are many experts in the Imperial Palace. With his ability, it would be more than enough for him to find a teacher for you. After saying so, Madame Wang finally gave up. Wang Chong quickly changed the topic and found an excuse to change the topic, which made his mother laugh. Coming out of the room, Wang Chong wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. I'll have to inform uncle about this matter, lest we expose ourselves. Wang Chong thought to himself. Although he temporarily used his uncle as a shield, Wang Chong did not dare to be careless. Although his mother was easy to talk to at times, she wasn't easy to fool at other times. Perhaps one day, he would ask about his master on a whim. Looks like that matter has to be brought forward. Wang Chong quietly said to himself as he recalled that matter. Setting off from his residence, Wang Chong drove straight to the Wei residence. Wang Chong, ha ha ha, you're finally back. Upon hearing the news, Wei Hao ran out of his residence excitedly with a look of anticipation on his face. It had been a while since they last met, and Wei Hao's frame seemed to have grown significantly. His spirit was completely different from before. Furthermore, he even brought along a few lackeys from the prestigious clans. I heard that you were out of the city, so I went to your residence a few times. The guards at your residence have no idea where you went. Right, these are my new lackeys, Tao Chun and Lu Jin. Hurry up and pay respect to young Master Chong. Wei Hao laughed as he looked behind him. Paying respect to young Master Chong. Upon hearing Wei Hao's words, the two scions hurriedly bowed. When he stood up, he glanced at Wang Chong in the carriage with a tinge of fear in his eyes. There was probably no one in the Eight Gods Pavilion who didn't know of Wang Chong. It seems like you've been doing well recently. Wang Chong looked at the two scions in surprise. Wei Hao was known as a lone wolf in the Eight Gods Pavilion. Other than him, he didn't have any friends. But now, this fellow actually took in lackeys. Not bad. You've been living well recently. Wang Chong was here to look for Wei Hao, but at this moment, he wasn't in a hurry anymore. Hee, of course. You might not know, but that lad, Gao Fei, has become extremely obedient after beating him up. Ha, do you think it'll be that easy for that lad, Su Bai, to lay a finger on me? Right now, in the 8 Gods Pavilion, I, Wei Hao, am an 8-legged crab. Wei Hao patted his chest gleefully. Ha, youngster Wei, cut it out. I still don't know who you are. Wang Chong exposed him with a single sentence and beckoned him over. Come up, I have something to talk to you about. Oh. You guys can return first. I'll look for you later. Seeing that Wang Chong was serious, Wei Hao beckoned to the 2 scions behind him, and without any hesitation, he immediately dived into Wang Chong's carriage. The carriage began moving, and Wei Hao sat down opposite to Wang Chong. Wang Chong, what's the matter? Wei Hao, do you remember what I told you previously? That I wanted you to look for someone for me. Zhang Munian. No, the other one. You can't have forgotten about it, right? Wang Chong said. You mean that? Wei Hao immediately understood what he meant. Regarding the matter regarding the charity hall, I've done as you instructed. Right now, there are around 30 shops in the capital that are run by us. Every day, we would give out porridge, clothes, and blankets to the vagabonds and beggars. However, the daily expenses for these are huge, and you should be able to afford it. As for the old man you wanted me to look for, I've paid attention to him as well. I really didn't see him. Back then, after the incident at the Bluebottle Pavilion, Wang Chong's uncle interceded on his behalf, and he sold the first Wuzi steel sword to Zhao Fengchen for 37,000 taels. Wang Chong gave half of the money to Ablonadin and Arloja, and the other half to Wei Hao. It was then that Wang Chong requested Wei Hao to do him a favor. The first matter was to set up the charity hall. In his previous life, when the Wang clan fell, Wang Chong's entire family wandered from place to place, experiencing all kinds of hardships in the world. They were treated coldly, looked down on, and starved. This was because he had experienced such a life, and he had accepted gifts and help from others. Thus, he could understand why. Regardless of the era, space-time continuum, or even the most prosperous era, there was no lack of vagabonds and beggars who wandered from place to place. There were all sorts of reasons why these people wandered from place to place. Some of them were like Wang Chong in his previous life, some were born with a disability, some met with an unexpected calamity, some suffered a huge mental trauma, and some lost the land that they relied on for survival. Regardless of the reason, every single one of them had a different tragedy to face. Due to his own experience, Wang Chong wanted to set up the charity hall to help those in need. It was just like those people whose names he didn't know, but who had helped him in his previous life. This was one of Wang Chong's wishes in his previous life. The other matter was to look for a mysterious old man. In his previous life, there were a few things that Wang Chong wanted the most, but he had never been able to obtain them. Even in his death, he had no fate with these things. One of them was So Yung-sun's art of god and demon obliteration. In the Battle of the Capital, So Yung-sun had used his own strength to display a world-shaking sword art, killing thousands of the otherworldly invaders and stopping their offensive. This supreme art had just revealed its edge and shocked the world when it was buried together with So Yung-sun in the ruins of the capital, becoming a lost art. In the days to come, there would be countless bloody battles that required this art, but no one would be able to use it. Countless people sighed endlessly when they brought it up, revealing endless regret. The other was the great Yin-Yang heaven creation art. In the war against the otherworldly invaders in the Central Plains, there was one person who stood out the most. He didn't need any weapons, but he could easily kill a large number of the otherworldly invaders. Before him, all the otherworldly invaders would be turned into withered corpses, their deaths extremely gruesome. In the war against the otherworldly invaders, the might displayed by the great Yin-Yang heaven creation art was not one bit inferior to that of So Yung-sun, who had fought against 10,000 in the capital. In the apocalyptic era, this was publicly acknowledged as one of the 5 great arts. Unfortunately, even though this person had obtained the world mining art, his talent was far too lacking. His combat experience, reaction speed, agility, and adaptability were all incomparable to this supreme art. Given this person's mediocre talent, he should never have learned this art. Later on, he learned that this was indeed the case. When this person was 27 or 28, he had accomplished nothing and was working as a hired laborer in a wealthy clan. He didn't have much of a cultivation in martial arts, and he didn't even have much interest in it. However, his greatest merit was that he had a kind heart. Normally, he would often help those in need. Then, one day, for some unknown reason, he actually saved a peerless devil. When this demon was young, he committed all sorts of evil and killed countless people, inspiring fear in the world of sections. But after he was betrayed and saved by that person, his personality underwent a huge change. He abandoned evil and became a kind and benevolent old man. The old man had forced him to accept the great yin-yang heaven creation art, and had even led him onto a completely different path. As if to atone for his sins, and also to change that person's overly ordinary and mediocre aptitude, the old man gave up all of his power and even his life. He used the Great Enlightenment technique to transfer all of his power to that person, and from then on, he created a peerless genius. As for the old man himself, he died from the dissipation of his cultivation. Just like that, an ordinary 28-year-old man with mediocre talent became a top-notch expert in the span of a single night. In order to repay the old man's kindness, he hardened his heart and killed those who had betrayed the old man. At the same time, he also walked a path that he had never wanted to tread. Wang Chong had never met that person, but all of this, including all of his encounters, had been spread by that person himself. When a person stepped onto a path that he didn't like, even if he succeeded, he wouldn't be happy. When a person was born with mediocre talent and had no intention of stepping onto the martial path, his fate was already sealed the moment he stepped onto this path in order to repay the old man's kindness. In the end, that peerless expert who possessed the great yin-yang heaven creation art fell into a heavy encirclement because of his mediocrity in combat. He was surrounded and killed by the horsemen of the foreign lands. The great yin-yang heaven creation art was lost in the later stages as a result. At that time, Wang Chong hadn't become the Grand Marshal of the Central Plains yet, and the martial artists of the Central Plains hadn't begun the campaign to promote martial arts to the public. Chapter 138. Wang Chong remembered all of these things deeply. These were the things that Wang Chong deeply regretted after he became the Grand Marshal of the Central Plains. It was precisely because of this that his path to saving the Central Plains was filled with twists and tribulations. Even until his death, Wang Chong was unable to surpass his limits and reach those legendary realms. As such, in this reincarnation, Wang Chong's greatest wish was to make up for the regrets in his heart. He wanted to obtain these ultimate arts that were destined to be forgotten in the future. Not only was it for himself, but it was also so that these top-notch ultimate arts wouldn't be buried in the dust of history like in his previous life. As such, on Wang Chong's list of names, the old man who possessed the great yin-yang heaven creation art had always been an important figure. However, it was a pity that the old man was too mysterious. Even that old man was extremely secretive about his unorthodox teacher, only addressing him as the evil emperor. The capital was massive, so how could Wang Chong know when he would be ambushed or where he would appear? In this aspect, Wang Chong could only ask for Wei Hao's help. There's no need to rush this matter. Just help me keep a lookout. See if there's any special old man. Wang Chong knew that he had given Wei Hao too few details, and it was no different from searching for a needle in a haystack. It would be too difficult for Wei Hao to find the evil emperor with just these few details. After driving Wei Hao around the city, Wang Chong took a look at the charity hall. Wei Hao had indeed done a good job. The entrance of the charity hall was packed with people. Clothes, food, water, and a place to rest. All of these were well prepared. In this aspect, It was much better for the Wei clan to have a specialized talent than for him to do it himself. I will have Shanghai prepare another 50,000 gold taels for you. Open more of these charity halls. Other than the capital, you can open more of them in other places as well. Also, help me keep an eye on the old man I mentioned when you have the time. Inform me as soon as you receive any news. All right. Wei Hao agreed without hesitation. After chatting with Wei Hao for a while, Wang Chong put Wei Hao down and walked toward the Ghost Tree District. Now that he thought about it, it had been more than a month since he last went to the Ghost Tree District to play chess. Big brother. Under the huge locust tree, most of the people had dispersed. However, there was another kid squatting on the ground. When he saw Wang Chong, his eyes lit up and he stood up, his face flushed with excitement. Little guy, you're still here. Wang Chong smiled and patted his head, handing over a candy man he had bought on the way. Big brother, why were you gone for so long? The old grandpa had asked several times. I thought you weren't coming. The child named Jian said. His words were unintentional, but the listener took it to heart. Wang Chong's heart skipped a beat when he heard the old man Jian mentioned several times. After playing chess for so long, this was the first time Wang Chong had heard of that person. There was no doubt that his performance in chess had finally attracted his attention. Don't worry, how could Big Brother not come? I'm just going on a long trip. Wang Chong smiled. Then will Big Brother go on a long trip again? I don't think so. Wang Chong said. The opening of the 3 major training camps was a major event that could affect one's career and fate for the rest of one's life. In comparison, advancing 1 or 2 levels in the spirit vein wasn't that important. In any case, he could go there again in the future. That's great. The child wasn't a scheming person. When he heard that Wang Chong wouldn't be going on a long trip again, he immediately jumped up in excitement. As he shouted, he reached his chubby hand into the chess jar and took out a black piece. Big brother, here's a piece for you. Wang Chong smiled and held the black piece in his hand, but his eyes were fixed on the chessboard. The first time Wang Chong had come here, the game on the golden chessboard had been a one-sided battle. There were only a dozen or so pieces on the chessboard. But now, the chessboard was densely packed with 80 or 90 black and white pieces. With a glance, Wang Chong knew that the white pieces were at an absolute disadvantage. The white pieces aren't far from losing. Looking at the golden chessboard, Wang Chong smiled. So Young-sun might be unparalleled in martial arts and was a war god, but when it came to the art of war, he was no match for him. When it came to commanding battles, he had probably experienced more battles than Wang Chong in his previous life, not less. Moreover, before he transmigrated, he was already the publicly acknowledged war saint in a global strategy game. In terms of martial arts, he was naturally miles behind So Young-sun. But when it came to the art of war, there was probably no one in this world who could beat him. In a few more days, the white pieces will probably have to admit defeat. Wang Chong laughed in his heart. His way of playing chess was completely different from others. From the first day, his black pieces had been laying out a game. Looking at the situation, Su Jingchen felt that he only held a slight advantage at the moment. But after a few days, his plan would be completed. So Young-sun would know that he had no hope at all. Wang Chong might have challenged him to a duel, but to play chess with him, even if it was the war god that he respected, he had chosen the wrong opponent. Pa! As these thoughts flashed past his mind, Wang Chong put down his piece and pressed it neatly on the golden chessboard. One more thing. After leaving the Ghost Tree District, Wang Chong thought of Liu Zhizhang. It had been more than a month, and logically speaking, he should have at least 3 elixirs. Turning his horse around, Wang Chong headed straight for the Falling Jade Pavilion. Io, my little ancestor, eldest young master, eldest young master. You're finally here. If you're any later, something big is going to happen. In the falling jade pavilion, a lamp was lit. Seeing Wang Chong appear, Liu Zhizhang slapped his thigh with a frightened expression. Do you know that if you don't appear, the qualification that you obtained with great difficulty will be revoked? Then, the qualification to become a shadow that he had worked so hard to obtain would be revoked. That's 200,000 gold taels. That's 200,000 gold taels. Ha, don't exaggerate it. If something really goes wrong, can you handle it? Where's the elixir? Hurry up and hand it over. Wang Chong laughed heartily, not falling for his trick. Liu Zhizhang was from the Alchemist Alliance, and given his strength, it was only a matter of a few days. It was impossible for him to stall for time. As expected, after hearing Wang Chong's words, Liu Zhizhang chuckled awkwardly. This young master of the Wang clan might be young, but it wasn't easy to fool him. Where's the elixir? 3, right? Hand it over. Wang Chong said as he lifted his robe and sat down on the tiger skin chair in the room. The falling jade pavilion looked eerie from the outside, but it was luxurious on the inside. Hee, as expected, I can't hide it from young master. Liu Zhizhang didn't beat around the bush and walked into the room. When he came out, there were a few purple brocade boxes in his hands. Young master, please open it. This is something that I exchanged with a few others for you this month. Liu Zhizhang said with a fawning expression. The Alchemist Alliance wouldn't easily do business with outsiders. For example, the Wang clan might be a family with 3 generations of generals and ministers, but they didn't enter the eyes of the Alchemist Alliance. Their partners were all longtime allies. Some of them even originated from the previous dynasty and were extremely secretive. However, the Wang clan was the most special one. Not only did they have a huge influence in the court, but they also made up for their biggest shortcoming, wealth. It was just like the embryonic form of the empire's largest family in the future. At least, in Liu Zhizhang's eyes, as long as everything remained unchanged. In the future, they might become the newest and eternal partner of the Alchemist Alliance. It's been hard on you. Don't worry. I won't mistreat you for helping me. Wang Chong patted six-fingered Zhang's shoulders, as though he was impartial in his punishment and reward. Pa! When Wang Chong opened the first box, a familiar smell assailed his nostrils. Within the brocade box, a white pill lay at the bottom of the box. Its surface was emitting a faint aura. Tiger Bone Small Rejuvenation Pill. Wang Chong's eyes lit up as he called out. Among all the pills, the one he liked the most was this pill that could raise one's aptitude. This kind of pill was really too rare. It was impossible to buy it in the outside world. This was the exclusive trade of the Alchemist Alliance in the palace. This small rejuvenation pill seems a little different. Suddenly, Wang Chong's eyelids twitched. He noticed something different. This tiger bone small rejuvenation pill seemed to be different from the one he had consumed before. Young master has good eyesight. The one you consumed before was just a defective product. This was the pill that had been refined to perfection. The effect is completely different. Six-fingered Zhang chuckled, revealing Zhang Xian's secret. What? Wang Chong was taken aback. He immediately looked at the pills in the brocade box. Young master, don't be nervous. Our Alchemist Alliance doesn't sell defective products. All of these pills were of good quality. The so-called defective products are only in the eyes of us alchemists. In the outside world, they are still top-notch pills. I know that young master wants top-notch pills that can raise one's aptitude. That's why I spent a lot of effort to get them for you. Liu Zhizhang began to take credit. Did you go gambling again? Hearing this, Wang Chong smiled. He didn't even look at the pills. He raised his head and looked at Liu Zhizhang. Listen to me. If you want to gamble, you can. But don't go to those galley gambling houses anymore. At that time, you will be in trouble. I won't be able to save you every time. Wang Chong said. Young master's eyes are really sharp. Liu Zhizhang smiled embarrassedly. Being stared at by a 15-year-old boy made him feel like a child doing something wrong in front of an adult. Liu Zhizhang knew that this was wrong, but he couldn't help but have such a feeling. This young master of the Wang clan was simply too cunning. He could see through one's heart with just a glance. He didn't say anything at all. He just knew that he went to gamble and was short of money. In just a few interactions, Six-Fingered Zhang already felt that there was no secret he could hide from the other party. Don't worry, there will be plenty of benefits for you. Wang Chong just casually said and didn't pursue the matter seriously. With a snap, Wang Chong opened the box. A dense wave of elemental energy immediately emitted from the brocade box. Smelling this scent, Wang Chong's expression changed. Elemental Qi Pill. You guys can actually refine such a thing. Chapter 139. It's not that powerful. Hearing the name Vitality Pill, Liu Zhizhang was startled. That wasn't the name of the pill. However, he quickly understood what Wang Chong meant. This is an acquired pill. It's a new pill recipe that a young alchemist in the palace recently researched. It has never appeared before. It's very difficult to refine, and it has exploded many times. Right now, it's only a few defective products. It hasn't been perfected yet. This kind of defective product that was first refined cannot be presented to the Holy Emperor or the princes in the palace. If there's a problem, their heads will fall off. In the end, they brought it here. I can't help it. This is a hard sell. Every month, there would always be some pills like this that were forced to be distributed. They're expensive and not very good. At the end, Six-Fingered Zhang had an embarrassed look on his face. Defective product. Wang Chong turned around with a surprised look. He looked at the pill on the table again. Sure enough, the pill didn't emit pure vitality, but some other impurities. He was too shocked before, so he didn't notice it. What you see is actually just a layer of wax on the outside. This way, the impurities in the pill can be sealed. Liu Zhizhang said embarrassedly. This was a small trick in alchemy. He was an alchemist himself, so he naturally knew about it. Wang Chong's eyes flickered, but he didn't say much. He grabbed the acquired pill on the table and stuffed it into his mouth. After the skin of the pill broke, a messy smell immediately came out. It's the smell of medicinal herbs, and it should be the kind of high-grade spiritual herbs. Wang Chong suddenly came to a realization. The alchemist probably wanted to extract the spiritual energy in the medicinal herbs, and then use some special method to refine something like the vitality pill. However, this matter was obviously not that easy. Gulp. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, Wang Chong mumbled and quickly swallowed the pill. A wave of heat exploded in his body, quickly spreading to his limbs and bones. Wang Chong felt warm all over. With the help of the Dan Qi, Wang Chong felt that his strength had increased by a notch in just a moment. Compared to before, the essence in his body had also increased a little. After a while, when the medicinal efficacy of the pill disappeared, Wang Chong finally calmed down. What 6 batches Zhang said was right. This was indeed not some essence qi pill. There was only a small amount of essence qi in the elixir, not as much as Wang Chong had imagined. Liu Zhizhang didn't think much of it. From an alchemist's point of view, a defective product was worthless. But Wang Chong was different. I didn't expect that I could actually use money to buy something similar to the essence qi pill. Wang Chong's heart rose and fell, and it was difficult for him to calm down. To a martial artist, the most precious thing was undoubtedly yuan qi. In the imperial palace, there was actually someone who could refine something similar to the essence qi pill. This truly shocked Wang Chong. Wang Chong finally understood why this alchemist's secret alliance was so mysterious. The items were sold at such a high price, yet there were so many powerful forces that flocked to it. There were many things here that couldn't be bought with money in the outside world. This was truly a priceless treasure. How much does one acquired pill cost? Wang Chong asked, opening his eyes. 6,000 taels. Liu Zhizhang said. He wasn't talking about silver here, but actual gold. This was an alchemist used by the imperial palace. He had never sold an elixir that was priced in silver. How many can you refine in a month? 3. Liu Zhizhang said. I want all of them. Bring them all over for me. Wang Chong said. Ah. Six-fingered Zhang was astonished. But this is a defective product of the elementary level. I know. Wang Chong smiled and said in an unquestionable tone. The last one was a healing elixir. Although it looked ordinary, how could a healing elixir concocted by the imperial palace's alchemist be comparable to an ordinary one? With 2 elixirs, Wang Chong left the falling jade pavilion. After solving all the problems at once, Wang Chong focused all his attention on the 7 qi-long saber. This was Wang Chong's second weapon, which was very important to Wang Chong. Moreover, one wouldn't know the cost of daily necessities. Previously, when Wang Chong received more than 600,000 taels of gold, he felt that he would never be able to finish spending it. But when he really put it to use, he felt that he was spending money like water. Joining the alchemist's secret alliance cost him more than 200,000 taels of gold. After giving Wei Hao 50 to 60 taels of gold, and adding other miscellaneous items, Wang Chong only had about 200,000 taels of gold left. At this rate, he was afraid that he would soon run out of money. If so, he would fall back to his previous penniless state. It's about time for me to bring out my new work. Wang Chong thought to himself. Driving the car, Wang Chong made sure that no one was tailing him before entering the cavern of the Wei clan's smithy once more. The surroundings of the smithy were silent. Wei Hao had already given this place to Wang Chong. As long as Wang Chong needed it, this place could become Wang Chong's personal smithy. The Wei clan had many businesses, and smithy was only one of them. Take this smithy as an example. As long as Wei Hao made up for its loss, even his father, the Duke of Wei, wouldn't be able to notice that something had been done to it. Help me guard the outside, don't let anyone get close. Wang Chong arranged for Li Zhuxin to guard the outside before entering the cavern alone. Wang Chong was already very familiar with quenching weapons. Even though quenching was very important to a weapon, like a phoenix rising from the ashes, it wasn't actually that complicated to operate. The key was the change in thinking and the change in the quenching fluid. The quenching that Wang Chong had mastered was completely beyond this era. Walking into the cavern, Wang Chong poured the quenching fluid, that was a mixture of sesame oil, sheep oil, butter, and asphalt brought by the western region merchants, into the metal trough. Then, he went to the nearby area to cut some pine branches, piled them on the ground, and started burning them. The temperature at which Wuzi steel was quenched was very important. Otherwise, even if one mastered the right quenching fluid, the quality of the final product could be worlds apart, and it might even turn into a waste product. From night till dawn, Wang Chong was extremely busy. Around daybreak, the morning sun rose. A sizzling black smoke rose from the metal trough. A moment later, Wang Chong took out a pair of metal pliers and fished out the narrow, thin, and thick saber from the trough. Oil flowed everywhere, and a shiny saber with beautiful patterns appeared in front of Wang Chong. This was the world's first narrow, thin, and thick saber. When the morning sun shone in from outside the cavern, it reflected a dazzling, cold light. Just by looking at it, Wang Chong could feel that this saber was extremely sharp and indestructible. Clang! With a flash of cold light, the metal trough containing the quenching fluid was immediately cut into 2. It was so soft that it looked like it was rotting. Good saber. Wang Chong looked at the saber and smiled. Even without the praise of others, Wang Chong could feel that this saber was probably even sharper than his Wuzi steel sword. This saber combined the skills of the world's #1 swordsmith, Tuoba Guiyuan, and his epic-making skills. In terms of quality, it had already reached the peak of this world. Moreover, the unique arc and weight of the blade were enough to make it the favorite of experts in the saber Dao. It's a pity that I only use swords, Wang Chong thought to himself. He used a sword for his single-character consecutive slash, and this saber wasn't suitable for him. However, even a swordsman like Wang Chong couldn't bear to let go of this saber when he held it in his hands. Needless to say, those saber experts would feel the same way. This saber wasn't just sharp. Its exterior design was originally very suitable for slashing, and slashing. Now, all that's left is to temper it. Wang Chong thought to himself. To many people, a saber like Wang Chong's was already a finished product. Even if he took it out, it would be sought after by tens of thousands of people. However, Wang Chong knew that this wasn't the way to go. Although such a saber was sharp and easy to use, it was easy to break. If it was too rigid, it might not be a good thing for a saber. If he didn't solve this problem, it might be broken at a crucial moment in the hands of a top-notch martial artist. In this world, although there weren't many people who forged sabers, there were definitely people who understood sabers. At least, many people knew the principle of rigid but easy to break. For those top-notch martial artists, they could use brute force to hit the middle of the saber or close to 70% of the hilt. They would most likely be able to break the saber with brute force. If that happened, the reputation of Wuzi steel in this world would be ruined. The reputation that Wang Chong had painstakingly built up would also be destroyed. In the future, it wouldn't be so easy to make money from Hyderabad ores. That would be destroying his own reputation. Of course, Wang Chong wouldn't do such a thing. Therefore, he had to temper it. Many people thought that after quenching, the saber and sword were considered complete. However, almost no one knew that after quenching, there was actually another process called temper. This was the last process in the entire process of forging a sword, and it was also the highest and pinnacle of the process. In this world, many people hadn't even mastered the skill of quenching, let alone the epic-making skill of temper. This was a skill that Wang Chong had mastered alone. At the same time, it was his biggest and final secret in the field of swordsmithing. Without the technique of temper, a weapon like the 7-foot narrow, thick saber would never be made. If it was made, it would only be a joke and not a real weapon. Temper could eliminate the quenching and the small internal cracks caused by the hammering of the saber and sword. It could also repair and prevent the saber from deforming. This was one of the reasons. In addition, temper could further increase the performance of the saber and sword in all aspects, including sharpness, hardness, durability, and most importantly, toughness. Toughness might not sound like much, but if one thought about it, adding toughness to an extremely hard weapon was incredible. It was like wrapping a piece of ice in a fire and not melting it. Once a 7-foot narrow, thick saber had toughness, even if it was just a little bit, it would make a huge difference in performance. With toughness, the saber could be considered to have truly made up for its shortcomings and become a real top-notch weapon. Moreover, he wouldn't have to worry about being snapped by the fingers of those top-notch fighters in battle. With temper, he could add toughness to a weapon. This meant that in this world, Wang Chong had truly mastered a never-before-seen weapon-making technique. Chapter 140. The nurturing of Uncle in the cavern, Wang Chong chopped some pine branches and started a new fire. Unlike quenching, this was a small fire. There were only a few pine branches. The temperature of tempering was even lower than that of quenching, around 150 degrees Celsius. Thus, a small fire with a few pine branches sufficed. It's about time. Wang Chong placed a hand on top of the fire and felt that it was about time. Thus, he placed the quenched saber on top of the fire. A temperature of 150 degrees Celsius was extremely low, far from being able to melt Wu Zi's steel. In fact, it would be hard for the saber to even heat it until it was slightly red. Under such circumstances, and after being quenched, the toughness of the saber had reached an astonishing level. This meant that the tempering process was much more energy-consuming than quenching, and it required much more time and effort. If it was in the past, it would have been difficult for Wang Chong to complete the tempering of a finished Wu Zi steel product. However, after reaching Origin Energy Tier 7 and cultivating Might of the Barbaric God, Wang Chong's strength had increased significantly, allowing him to complete this process alone. Boom! As though a bolt of lightning, Wang Chong brandished his metal hammer and smashed it heavily against the surface of the saber. The heavy smithing platform trembled under Wang Chong's hammer, and a lot of stone powder and stone fragments fell from the cavern. Boom! Once. Twice. Thrice. Wang Chong exerted his full strength, and the metal hammer in his hand fell time and time again. He exerted his full strength every single time. Regarding the first Wu Zi steel saber that he was about to forge, Wang Chong was filled with anticipation. The sound of Wang Chong's hammer echoed throughout the cavern. The tempering process required much more time than quenching. The tough nature of the Wu Zi steel meant that Wang Chong needed to spend more time on this weapon. For the whole day, from sunrise to sunset, until all the pine branches that Wang Chong had cut down were burned. Wang Chong finally completed the tempering process. Sweating profusely, Wang Chong stood at the edge of the iron platform. His clothes were soaked, and the ground within 3 zhang of his feet was wet. Wang Chong had spent a lot of time and energy to forge this narrow, thin, and thick saber. However, Wang Chong's heart was filled with gratification and satisfaction as he looked at the new narrow, thin, and thick blade in his hand. After spending a day and a night, it's all worth it. Wang Chong gripped the hilt and raised the narrow, thin, and thick saber in his hand. This saber was gorgeous and beautiful, and its surface was filled with magical patterns that flowed like clouds and flowing water. At the same time, behind the gorgeous and beautiful appearance, there was an extreme coldness and bloodthirst. This was a weapon that was born to kill. However, in Wang Chong's hands, it was brought to perfection, reaching the level of art. Shua! Wang Chong held the saber in his wrist and shook it lightly. The air in the cavern immediately rippled like ripples, as though the air itself had been sliced into countless pieces. Amidst the embers of the pine branches, one could see that the sharpness of the narrow, thin, and thick saber was even more terrifying than before. What a good saber! Such a good saber should have its own name. Have you thought of what to call it? A series of footsteps sounded from behind. Li Zhuxin's robes fluttered as he walked into the cavern. Looking at the narrow, thin, and thick saber in Wang Chong's hands, his usually calm eyes couldn't help but waver. Hee, I've thought of it. Let's call it Death's Abyss. Wang Chong said with a smile. He seemed to have long known of Li Zhuxin's appearance. Death's Abyss? What a good name. If I knew that you had such a weapon, I might have changed my employment condition to this saber. Li Zhuxin stared at the Death's Abyss in Wang Chong's hands as he spoke. Even though he wasn't a saber user, he couldn't help but feel a sense of fondness for it, and he wanted to claim it for himself. To those true saber users, it was easy to imagine how attractive this saber was. Hee, even if you want it, I won't agree to it. Wang Chong chuckled. 2 June of Hyderabad ores were used to forge this Death's Abyss. Just its normal price alone would fetch at least 80,000 gold taels. Furthermore, this weapon was much more formidable than any weapon Wang Chong had forged before. On top of that, it even harnessed the tempering technique that Wang Chong had mastered. In terms of value, Wang Chong estimated it to be worth at least 100,000 gold taels. This price was much higher than the price he had to pay to hire Li Zhuxin. This was truly a priceless treasure. It represented the highest level of saber arts in this world. Leaving the cavern with Li Zhuxin, Wang Chong headed straight for the capital and handed the newly forged Death's Abyss to Uncle Li Lin. Upon seeing the newly forged Death's Abyss, Li Lin was overjoyed. Wang Chong had disappeared for more than a month, and in this period of time, Li Lin felt as if a year had passed. The Imperial Army commanders who came to demand for the Wuzi steel weapon had trampled through Li Lin's doorstep. Yet, most of them were Li Lin's superiors, and there were some whom even Zhao Fengchen couldn't afford to offend. The pressure that Li Lin was under was unimaginable. "Chonger, if you had come any later, you would have been collecting my corpse," Li Lin said with a look of relief. "Uncle, aren't you being too exaggerated?" Wang Chong chuckled. "I'm not exaggerating. Don't worry, Chonger, leave this matter to me." Without any hesitation, Li Lin was about to enter the royal palace with the Death's Abyss. "Wait a moment." Wang Chong hurriedly stopped Uncle Li Lin. Death's Abyss might be important, but this wasn't the only reason why Wang Chong came here this time. "There are a few things that I'll have to trouble Uncle to help me with." As Wang Chong spoke, he explained the matter regarding the Assassin Pavilion to Li Lin. To think that there would be such a thing." After hearing the entire matter, Li Lin harumphed coldly. A rare sliver of killing intent surfaced on his face. "It's one thing for them to deal with others, but to think that they would try to kill you as well, we can't let them live." "Don't worry, I'll inform Lord Zhao of this matter and have him help us deal with it." "You don't know. You're the apple of everyone's eye in the Imperial Army. If anything were to happen to you, even without me and Lord Zhao making a move, the commanders of the Imperial Army would tear them to shreds." Li Lin wasn't spouting nonsense. At this moment, Wang Chong had already formed a huge chain of relationships. Based on what Wang Chong said, Li Lin had received money from many people in the Imperial Army. Yet, these people were still willing to send their money over. Furthermore, after the battle between Zhao Fengchen and Huang Xiaotian, the Wuzi steel sword forged by Wang Chong had gained the recognition of the entire Imperial Army, becoming the #1 blade of the Imperial Army. In the eyes of the Imperial Army, in the entire capital, or even the entire Central Plains, only the weapons forged by Wang Chong were worthy of the identity of an Imperial Army member. At this moment, as long as one was capable, every single Imperial Army member would look forward to receiving a Wuzi steel sword. Li Lin couldn't even collect enough money every month. If something were to happen to such a master swordsmith, it was easy to imagine how the Imperial Army would react. "Don't worry, I know that at least 3 commanders of the Imperial Army would be willing to make a move on this malignant tumor." What profound martial realm expert? What assassin pavilion? In the capital, going against you is equivalent to going against the entire Imperial Army. I'll get rid of every single one of these malignant tumors. Wang Chong's uncle, Li Lin, looked at Wang Chong with disdain, and a domineering aura flowed out from him. Even Wang Chong couldn't help but stare at him in astonishment. He had known his uncle for a long time, but he had never seen such domineering aura from him. The appearance is born from the heart, and the heart changes from the state. After being transferred out of the North Gate and promoted, my uncle's state of mind has changed as well. He has already nurtured his own domineering aura. Wang Chong thought. Wang Chong was delighted by this change. In his previous life, his uncle had always been a little fearful due to his relationship with the old master. However, things were different now. Men were ambitious, this was their nature. In Wang Chong's view, this was his uncle's true self. Perhaps, it's time for that matter to be brought forward. Wang Chong thought. In Wang Chong's heart, every single one of his family members was his left and right arms, and they were an important force that could change his fate. This time, Wang Chong was only here to hand over the Death's Abyss and have his uncle deal with the Assassin Pavilion. However, the domineering aura from his uncle had stirred Wang Chong's heart. The reason why Wang Chong helped his uncle wasn't because he wanted him to spend the rest of his life on the walls of the royal palace, or to serve as Zhao Fengchen's lackey. Toward his uncle, Wang Chong had greater expectations and ambitions. However, with his current strength, it was impossible for him to accomplish all of this. "Uncle, wait a moment." Under Uncle Li Lin's astonished gaze, Wang Chong suddenly dived into the carriage. When he came out, he was holding a handwritten secret manual in his hand. "Uncle, this is for you." Wang Chong took the secret manual that he had hidden in the secret chamber beneath the carriage and passed it over with a single hand. "Ah. For me. What is it?" Li Lin looked at Wang Chong in confusion, unable to make head or tail of what was going on. As he spoke, he subconsciously took it from Wang Chong. Initially, Li Lin was still in a daze, but after flipping through 2 pages, his face warped in astonishment. Martial Arts Secret Manual. What Wang Chong passed him was a martial arts secret manual, and an extremely formidable one at that. Just by flipping through a few pages, Li Lin could tell that this martial art was far more formidable than any of the martial arts he had learned before. "Chonger, how did you get such a thing?" Li Lin was astonished. This martial art was of an extremely high tier. Li Lin didn't believe that a teenager like Wang Chong could possess it. "Uncle, this was actually given to me by my grandfather." Wang Chong pointed it out and pushed all of the credit to his grandfather. Even though Wang Chong was able to purchase the Hyderabad ore and forge the Wuzi steel sword, it wasn't completely inconceivable. At the very least, it was within reason. However, for a top-notch martial arts secret manual to be taken out all of a sudden, it was impossible for one not to be suspicious. This wasn't something that could be explained by intelligence. It was precisely because of this that even though Wang Chong had already made a copy of this secret manual, he didn't find a suitable opportunity to pass it to him. "Until the Four Quarters Embassy, old master." Li Lin was astonished. "That's right. Do you still remember the Four Quarters Embassy? It was after my birthday that my grandfather asked my grandmother to pass it to me. Grandfather probably felt embarrassed, so he asked me to pass it to you." Feigning ignorance, Wang Chong said insincerely. Grandfather had been suppressing uncle to the position of the North Gate's underling. Even though it was for his own good, uncle was a man. It was hard to say that he wouldn't hold a grudge against uncle. In a sense, Wang Chong was helping to mend the rift between uncle and grandfather. "Old master," as expected, upon hearing Wang Chong's words, Li Lin seemed to have understood something, and his eyes were filled with gratitude. However, in front of Wang Chong, he managed to hold himself back. "I understand." Li Lin smiled. "If there's a chance, help me thank the old master. Tell him that uncle won't let him down. Leave the matter of the Wuzi steel saber to me. I'll be heading in now." After which, he turned around and walked toward the royal palace with Death's Abyss in tow. Perhaps it was his imagination, but Wang Chong felt as though a heavy burden had been lifted from his back, or as though a burden buried deep in his heart had been lifted. Chapter 141. After resolving the matter regarding the Wuzi steel, Wang Chong heaved a sigh of relief. However, he didn't let up. Instead, he continued to search for traces of the evil emperor, while heading to the Ghost Tree district to play chess. On the other hand, Uncle Li Lin's side was progressing swiftly as well. Seemingly out of anger at the assassin pavilion for attempting to assassinate Wang Chong, he vanished after just 2 days. While the imperial army was patrolling the capital, they discovered a nest of assassins with malicious intentions. All of them were killed, and their corpses piled up in the courtyard. This matter caused a huge uproar in the capital. It was said that a large number of Imperial Army experts were mobilized for this matter, and there were even 5 to 6 commanders of the Imperial Army. Many people witnessed it personally, and they said that the matter wasn't as simple as it seemed. However, there was one thing that was certain. These people were dressed in black and were dressed like assassins. This point was certain. Thus, no one spoke up for them. When Wang Chong heard of this matter, he chuckled lightly. He only sent a letter to Mayasame Ayaka before tossing the matter to the back of his mind. While Wang Chong was living his life peacefully, the depths of the royal palace wasn't peaceful at all. Deep in the night, somewhere in the abandoned cold palace of the imperial palace, the lights were brightly lit. Rows of lanterns were hung from the trees and the eaves. Outside the cold palace was a huge crowd. Imperial army members surrounded the area, and with a single glance, one could tell that there were at least 1,000 of them. Today was a big day for the imperial army. Everyone knew that the #1 swordsmith of the Tang dynasty would be auctioning off his second weapon. In the royal palace, there were many imperial army commanders who had been eagerly anticipating the auction. After witnessing the battle between Zhao Fengchen and Huang Xiaotian, everyone knew that this weapon was incomparably sharp, beautiful, and rare. To the imperial army, it could raise their fighting prowess by leaps and bounds. More importantly, this weapon was priceless, and it was something that could only be chanced upon. To the imperial army, only this weapon could serve as a foil to their standing. After so long, it's finally time for that Gongzi to forge a new weapon. He only makes a single one every month. It really makes one drool. If only there were more of them. The first weapon was taken by Commander Zhao. I just don't know who will be so lucky this time. Yeah. If only I had a Wuzi steel weapon like that. What a pity, it was so expensive. I can't afford it, so I can only look around. Outside the cold palace, there was a lot of discussion. Now, everyone knew that the son of a general or minister had handed over all the Wuzi steel weapons in the imperial army to his uncle, Li Lin. There was no one in the imperial army who didn't know of Li Lin. He's here, he's here. Suddenly, there was a commotion in front. Everyone looked up and saw that the door was open. A brilliant light shone through the door. Li Lin, clad in heavy armor and a long sword at his waist, appeared in front of everyone with a dignified expression. In an instant, the noisy imperial army fell silent. Now, those who want to auction weapons can come in with the slip from before, Li Lin said solemnly. The moment these words were spoken, the imperial army commanders walked in with smiles on their faces, holding the slips of paper that Wang Chong had given them. Everyone knew that the competition for this auction would be intense. That Wuzi steel weapon definitely wasn't cheap. But money. Who the heck cared about money? As long as they could buy that invincible weapon that could cut through metal as though mud, what did money matter? In any case, the imperial army didn't have much expenditure. Furthermore, even if they were to run into trouble in the future, they wouldn't have to worry about not being able to sell this weapon. The 20 to 30 imperial army leaders walked in together. Next, those with wooden tokens can come in, Li Lin said. This was Li Lin's idea. Even though Wang Chong wanted to sell batches of credentials, Li Lin didn't think that it was necessary. As a member of the imperial army, he knew how popular the Wuzi steel was. No matter where he went, there would be people talking about the auction at the Blue Bottle Pavilion. There were also people discussing the battle between Zhao Fengchen and Huang Xiaotian. A Wuzi steel weapon that was said to be indestructible and could even cut a strand of hair with the slightest breeze was enough to make one's blood boil and tremble, as if they wanted to get their hands on it. It was precisely because he was part of the imperial army that he knew how intense this hunger was that Li Lin dared to do it. One must know that this was an imperial army of more than 100,000 soldiers. However, Wang Chong's Wuzi steel sword was only produced once a month. It would be strange if the imperial army didn't go crazy over it. Therefore, Li Lin decided to divide the auction into 2 levels of qualifications. Wang Chong's slip was the first batch, and he could enjoy a discount. The wooden plate that Li Lin opened was from the second batch, which belonged to a lower level. With a wooden token, one could participate in the auction as well. However, they had to pay 10% more than the auction price. Moreover, it was different from the ones Wang Chong had written. Li Lin's wooden token was a one-time use item. Each wooden token cost 200 taels of gold, and it would become useless after a single match. If they wanted to participate next time, they would have to buy it again. Don't think it's too expensive. In Li Lin's view, it was still too cheap. There were more than 100,000 soldiers in the imperial army. Even if one didn't buy it, someone else would. There was no need to worry about not being able to sell it. Furthermore, those who were able to come here and spend tens of thousands of gold taels on Wuzi's steel swords would definitely not be short of 200 taels of gold. In Li Lin's view, this was the correct way to auction the Wuzi steel swords. Through this method, he could distinguish who the real buyers of the Wuzi steel swords were. As for Wang Chong's slips, what a waste. However, what was done could not be undone. Li Lin couldn't say anything more. In an instant, 70 to 80 imperial army leaders rushed in. Just these people alone had earned more than 15,000 taels of gold. To be able to earn more than 10,000 taels of gold from an auction of swords and sabers, only a fool wouldn't do such a good thing. Next, those with metal slips can come in. Li Lin said. This was the lowest level. In the imperial army, there were many who were curious about the Wuzi steel swords and had a strong desire for them. To Li Lin, since that was the case, why not make use of them as well? The more people that saw it, the better its reputation would be, and the faster it would spread. At the same time, more hidden buyers would appear in the imperial army. Thus, Li Lin signed the third-level metal slips. These metal slips were priced at 10 gold taels each, and it wasn't expensive. Those with metal slips were allowed to spectate by the side. However, they could only spectate by the side. They couldn't buy anything, and there weren't any seats. Don't complain about the poor service and lack of seats. One must know that there were more than 100,000 imperial army members waiting outside. In an instant, hundreds of imperial army members rushed forward. This was another few thousand gold taels of gold. Just this auction alone would earn Li Lin at least 20,000 gold taels. After doing all of this, Li Lin returned to the inner chamber. The cold palace of the royal palace was massive, and the small residences outside couldn't compare to it. The main hall was brightly lit, and at the very top of the hall sat 3 commanders. At the very center was Commander Zhao Fengchen. Time flew, and it had been more than a month since Zhao Fengchen took the position of commander. Compared to before, Zhao Fengchen's aura had clearly grown stronger and more authoritative. Li Lin entered the room and bowed slightly to Zhao Fengchen. Then, he walked up to a large rectangular wooden platform at the center of the hall. Lord Li, where's the Wuzi steel sword? Hurry up and take it out. Don't keep us in suspense. That's right, everyone is waiting. Lord Li, it's been more than a month. Our brothers have been waiting anxiously for it. Don't tease us anymore. Everyone jeered impatiently. They couldn't wait any longer. Lord Li, you can't be joking with us, right? Some of the imperial army commanders even expressed their displeasure. So anxious. Can't you wait even a moment? Li Lin chuckled. This was the effect he wanted. Since that's the case, I won't keep you in suspense. The second Wuzi steel sword is right here. Pa! Right after saying those words, Li Lin slammed his palm on the wooden platform before him. Pang! The wooden platform was smashed into pieces, and underneath the chest was a pitch-black weapon that was 7 feet long. The weapon was placed on a similarly long, hollow, pitch-black metal table. In an instant, the entire hall fell silent. Everyone thought that Li Lin was the one hosting the auction, but who could have thought that there would be a hidden mechanism hidden within the wooden platform? Lord Li, what's this? An imperial army commander stood up from his seat and pointed to the bizarre weapon on the hollow metal table. Many people thought that Wang Chang's work would be a sword, just like the previous one. But from the looks of it, that wasn't the case at all. The weapon was around 2 fingers wide, but it was 7 chi long. Furthermore, it had a certain curve to it, making it look extremely beautiful. It was sheathed in a black wooden sheath, and it looked completely different from any weapon that they had seen before. Ha ha ha, good question. This is the first saber that my nephew, Wang Chong, has forged. Just this point alone makes this saber extremely valuable as a collector's item. Furthermore, I believe that all of you can tell that this saber is extremely long. That's right, the craftsmanship of this saber is completely different from before. The materials used to forge this saber are twice that of swords. On top of that, this saber is just as sharp, perhaps even sharper. According to my nephew, this saber is made for killing, so he named it Death's Abyss. Around this saber, no one can escape death. Li Lin spoke with confidence and composure. Even before so many Imperial Army commanders, he didn't lose his composure at all. Death's Abyss. Everyone turned to look at him. Just the name itself was enough to tell that this saber was a famous one, and it was worth collecting. More importantly, this was the first saber creation of the #1 swordsmith in the world. Just this alone would be able to fetch a high price in the future. It's indeed worth it. This is the first saber creation. Such an item is priceless. In the hall, the Imperial Army commanders were trembling in agitation. They didn't lack money, but they had money that they couldn't spend. Not only could this weapon display their identity and raise their fighting prowess, it was also a collector's item. Wasn't this the best weapon? Li Lin, how much is this weapon? That's a good question. Li Lin's eyes lit up as he announced the starting bid. The starting bid for this Death's Abyss is 80,000 gold taels. There's only one, and it goes to the highest bidder. The auction begins now. Boom. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.